Welcome to the Lancaster Podcast, episode 25. Our guest today is Race Liberante. Many people know him just from his driving prowess. Had a hell of a year in 2019 where he's basically all over everything. We'll talk about that and more, but also his new rides now. He's got the Race Factory brand of chassis, so we're going to obviously talk about that. But before we get into all good stuff with him, we'll hit out some current events here, bud. We are recording this Monday, the 22nd? Right? Something like that. And we've got Challenge.
Challenge this weekend, yep.
Yeah, rounds 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. Obviously, rounds 1 and 2 happening in Phoenix.
You got to partake?
Indeed, I did. This is actually our first recording here in 2021. Everything else we did in the
That's right.
Preseason, if you will, or the off season, I should say. And so this is very current to current events.
Yeah. It's been a while since we recorded, for sure.
yeah. And the idea was to get way ahead of the game, and now here we are with nothing left.
Now we are way behind.
Exactly. I'll actually end up being, we'll get done with Challenge, and I'll edit this damn thing.
Yeah, the next
Monday,
day.
Yeah, and then have to get it out for Tuesday. Speaking of which, the point is that this is going to go out in a week's time, Tuesday, the 2nd of March, in theory. Buzzsprout, the hosting deal for us, is actually having a bit of an issue. They had a DDoS attack, so basically, bandwidth goes and takes a crap.
Some guy in his garage decided to give Buzzsprout a hard time.
Yeah. So hopefully they got it fixed in time so that this actually goes out when it's supposed to. But if not, we've also got Friday. We're going to try to do a live show. So hopefully this comes out on Tuesday, so hopefully that went well.
Yeah.
But on Friday we're going to try to do a live show over on the grid here. And hopefully get a few different people and different audience. Hopefully pump it over the PA, so that should be kind of fun. Hopefully that went well at all.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and
thanks to Sean Beer for all his help.
Yeah, Sean Beer, and then Andy Saisman of Challenge and FTK for letting us do it at his event. Mm-hmm. But also we're going to grab David Cole, and he's going to be on there. So thanks to Howden's not going to be here.
Thank God, yeah.
He's not going to be around. He got stuck in the Great White North.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be, I think, Chappie on the mic and then Cole holding down the fort for EKN. But,
right.
Anyway, yeah, Challenge this weekend. To your point, I did get a chance to go and run rounds 1 and 2. Never been to Phoenix before, so it was a learning experience on that course, and then also trying to get things dialed in on the Rock GP, which is a monster of an engine.
Seems like it, yeah.
Man, I'll tell you what, been doing, from 206 to 100cc, and then did a little bit, just a couple X30 events. Mm-hmm. The KA, if you will, or the 100cc to X30 is a very linear move. They drive very similar.
Not much more power that you're going to have to deal with.
Well, yeah, it's where the power is and how it comes on. It's not light switchy like from the people that know more than I am. They tell me they're right. It's the carburetor. It's the slide carburetor on the GP that makes that happen. Where you just a little bit and then game on.
It grabs, yeah.
But anyway, started getting things figured out. Was able to go double podium on the 100cc, a second and a third, and then we actually qualified third. On what the hell was that? Saturday?
That was huge.
In the GP?
Yeah.
And then
that was probably bigger than your poles in 100. Was
hell
third
yeah.
in Rock.
Oh yeah. And actually, I forgot I got pole.
Yeah.
I got both poles in the 100cc, which is awesome. Learning a new track and whatnot. Fun little track. Phoenix. I love the little chicane section, the curbs they have there.
Looks neat. I don't know. I mean, you'd know better than me and Race will too about how it races, but
well, I mean,
it looks cool to drive. I don't know how it races.
It's a lot of fun to drive. It's got really, after the start finish, there's this rhythm. I would even say the last corner and do 1, 2, 3, 4. This nice little rhythm throttle section.
Gotcha.
And what we had talked about how the 100cc stuff or the two-stroke stuff, it's a lot to do with the footwork.
Right.
And it's a real fun rhythm all the way through there. But
nice.
Anyway, yeah, Phoenix was pretty good. We got the third in GP. We did get on the podium, so for me that was big.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. Those guys are badasses. And hopefully we can do a little better here at the home track.
Yeah.
I'm going to need to do something if I'm going to have any shot at those guys because they're badasses. But, I mean, yeah, we'll see how it goes. And, when this comes out, it's all done and dusted, so hopefully
we'll go back and laugh at this. Yeah,
it's like, you might want to get out of karting, Mike. It didn't go so hot. But somebody who's in karting and been in karting for a while since he was a munchkin, we're going to talk to him right now. Let's go ahead and, without further ado, bring on Race Liberante. Race Liberante, thanks for coming out here, bud.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's only taken us 6 months to get this together. But,
Yeah,
we're here.
We think we started
Nice.
talking to you about doing it. God, it was middle of last year, maybe. Like,
Yeah.
hey, when are you going to come down or whatever? Because you're over in, was it Pennsylvania now?
Yeah, we're based out of Pittsburgh, so that's where I reside now, is in Pittsburgh, PA, where it's nice and cold. So I'm here in the winter, and I'm happy about it.
What? Maybe that's a good segue into what you do these days. Because I know you're originally from Bakersfield. Is that right?
No, from Lancaster. But
Oh,
close-
that's right.
Close
Lancaster,
enough.
Yeah.
Same
But
thing.
you ended up moving back east not too long ago, and now you got a whole different program. So why don't you just kind of tell us what the hell's going on with Race Liberante these days?
Yeah, so I moved out to North Carolina, Mooresville specifically, originally in end of 2018, and then was doing some dirt car racing, and then after that kind of folded up, started a kart team, and then ended up moving everything up to Pittsburgh a year and a half or so later, and now we manufacture go-karts and have a national level go-karting team.
And originally you go over to North Carolina to race, to try to become a race car driver, if you will, I'm assuming. You said dirt cars, but was that the goal or the thought process?
So when I actually ended up moving out there, I was running, supposed to run dirt modifieds with Ron Hornaday. So my crew chief on asphalt here was really tight with him back in the day when he was coming up through his career. So kind of put that together, and I moved out there. I was sleeping on his couch, living on the couch, kind of the same Kevin Harvick and Jimmy Johnson story, and hopefully I was going to play it out till the end.
Same couch too.
Yeah, yeah, doesn't smell good. No. So I was doing that for a while, building race cars with him. He was building his own dirt modified, so learned a lot from him. Got to work with him every single day for a year or so, and then found my way out to GoPro Motorplex and started just kind of hanging out, practicing my own go-kart, the one I brought out there from here, and met a few people that needed help. So naturally, that turned into a go-karting team.
Right.
It was one of the only ones there that would take you on any brand, because there's a lot of brand-specific teams nowadays. And
No, you say naturally. I think naturally that turns into coaching or whatnot. So how do you go from just coaching or whatever, since you're out there, to, oh, no, okay, I'll start a team?
Because I started coaching. That's where it started, and then a couple of the customers or guys I was coaching were like, "Yeah, well, what do we do on the weekends?" They're all pitted across the pit from each other, and it was kind of hard to bounce around to help 4 or 5 different guys. So eventually, I was like, you know what, I've got
Let's
a trailer.
move you over here and
Yeah.
you right here. Yeah.
Yeah, so it all started in a 10 by 14 storage unit. It was where I was prepping people's go-karts, and that was my quote-unquote shop. And
Right there at the track?
I wasn't fortunate enough to have one at the track.
Oh, wow.
So that would have been nice. No, it was around the corner from my house in Mooresville. It started there, and I would trailer everybody's stuff to the track. Eventually,
You're still on the couch?
yeah.
So
yeah.
you're
Oh,
still
wow.
and that was at Hornaday's joint?
No. So I had a storage unit like down the street.
Oh, wow.
And then I eventually moved out on my own when I started the kart thing, because the modified thing was kind of not necessarily going under, but he was kind of pulling out of it.
Okay.
So it was kind of good timing that we kind of separated. I still saw them on a daily basis, but I was doing my thing and they were kind of doing theirs. So I started that, and then moved up to a U-Haul shop storage unit with
Nice.
anybody that's ever had a U-Haul storage unit. There's like ones with little offices in the front for whatever reason.
Oh, no, I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah, it actually looks like a cool little shop. It was like only 600 square feet or so, but it was enough to get the job done.
Oh, wow.
And
And you can see you have your own office too. So
exactly. Even though it was full of canopies and tables.
President.
And
Yeah.
all the crap. Yeah, El Presidente.
Yeah. There's no power, no internet or like that, but hey, it looks cool.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
guy, make sure you leave the roll up there.
Yeah, that was your light. That was your light source. When it got dark, it was time to go home.
yeah.
Nice.
But no, we did pretty good for a little crappy team out of North Carolina. We won a few championships, a lot of races. So
How long did you do that for?
it's about a year and a half, and then I started working with Checkered Motorsports a lot. The guys that manufacture the Magic Kart now.
Oh, okay.
I was tight with those guys, and we traveled a lot. So if their guys came south, they ran with me. If my guys went north, I ran with them, and I would go work for them and stuff on time to time.
What year was that you went out there?
That would be 18.
You moved out there?
Sorry, I moved out there at it was Thanksgiving Day of 2017. I got to Mooresville. So,
Gotcha.
Oh wow.
yeah, so this is 2018. So I did the team thing for about a year, and then I ended up moving up to Pittsburgh, where I continued the team thing, but I was traveling down to Mooresville every other weekend or so and doing some stuff in the Northeast. And then from there, got my ride with Compkart for those 2 years, where I think it was 19 I came back finally, and had like you said in your intro of me, I had a pretty good year. And
Yeah, for sure.
year later, now we're kind of here where we're at.
Man, it's crazy stuff. I figure we'll probably jump into more about the race factory and things like that here in a little bit, but I kind of want to, as we always do with these things, kind of get to the origin. Like, how old are you now? You're mid 20s, right?
Yeah, 26.
26?
Yep.
And you've been running now for damn near 20 years, right?
22 years, actually.
Wow.
Yep.
So
Wow. Jesus.
let's talk about how race, but I had Sean Buer ask me to ask you about the name. What's the
I was
story
gonna ask
behind
too, actually, yeah.
Race Liberante?
Yeah, so my name doesn't have much to do with racing. I mean, my father's an old racer. He raced, Formula Atlantics and stuff like that in the past. And so when my parents actually met at the racetrack, my dad was an instructor at a school, and my mom was doing a class. I think she was a police officer at the time, so they did like fun classes on driving instruction, and my dad was the instructor. So they met at the track, which is kind of cool. But it was actually, I'm named after Race Bannon from Johnny Quest.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So if none of you guys ever see me, he's tall, handsome, and blonde. I am none of those. So, but yeah, my dad named me after Race Bannon. I think my mom was already sedated when he dropped it to her, and she said sure. And
Regretted ever since.
yeah, and actually, it kind of sucked growing up. At school, I'd get picked on a little bit, and there's plenty of different things you could say with the name Race, or even Liberante. Chris Carmody, which is a legend in karting, he used to call me Liberace when I was a kid. So first and last name didn't help.
Eric Thompson's is here doing some unloading for challenge and whatnot, and he goes Liberace. Yeah. So
God.
Yeah, so
That's
that
where
one
that
kind
came
of stick.
from.
Yeah, or it stuck. But yeah, now I love it. Obviously, it's my life. It's such a sad, lame slogan, but it's not just my name, it's my way of life.
Wow.
It's terrible, but so cheesy, but it's kind of true. So
Could have found like a Johnny Quest slogan or something like that to work with.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't think anybody like under the age of 40 would really get it.
That's
so.
true.
Yeah, in fact, Derek's looking up, what is Johnny Quest? Right now? He has no idea.
What the shit?
Sounds like a porn star.
It's not, though, Derek.
Oh.
Yeah, it is a
Young
safe
man.
site. Yeah,
I'm
you're
uninterested now.
There's a dog.
So you so you end up having this, ironically, nothing to do with racing name, but then you actually get into racing at a pretty damn early age. As you say, your dad did some racing himself. How did that all happen?
Yeah, so my first day at the racetrack, I was a whopping 3 days old.
Wow.
My dad used to have his own go-kart team, but back in the early 90s, sprint karting and road racing were actually par with one another. So Buddy Rice was driving for my father at the time when I was a little baby. And
Is this all out of Lancaster?
Yep. It was all out of Lancaster. I remember it was a terrible little shop off the 14 freeway out there. And he had his karting team, and the day I turned 4 years old, there was a go-kart sitting in the living room, and took me out the first time in a parking lot, and we kind of ran around, and I was hooked. Ever since, we did about a year of practice, and actually Louis Pagano and I entered our first race together, and we grew up. We're a day apart, so we grew up identical, like right with each other, racing every weekend in kid karts together and everything. So, ever since then, it's kind of been an addiction, and one I don't regret, but I kind of wish I had a baseball. I'd save a lot of money.
Yeah.
Were you running at Willow then? Was Willow the main place you were racing as a munchkin?
Yeah, so back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was the club was called Gold Coast Karters, which was Mike Manning and Mr. Brown. I don't remember Mr. Brown's first name, but it's Mr. Brown. And the club, I mean, I refer back to those days so much, and talking to a lot of people in the sport, and I remember kid kart, there was 30 kids on the line every weekend.
Yeah.
And cadets, there was, once in a while, if it was the weekend before an IKF Region 7 race, there was a B main. So it was a different time, but the club was really like what you would see, how LAKC was in the last 2 or 3, 4 years, what Tri-C's kind of becoming now. Go Promoterplex has like a very big competitive kart club. It was kind of, for lack of a better term, the shit.
Right.
As far as kart clubs in Southern California. So, I grew up there. And then I didn't grow up with a lot of money. So we didn't get to do a lot of national racing, but we did every time Region 7 would come to town, we'd do that. We'd come to LAKC once in a blue moon. We'd go to Vegas a lot because that's only 3.5 hours from Lancaster. So we'd go run at Xplex for club races and regional races. And Buffalo Bills was always my favorite race for IKF. And So we stayed super local. I think the furthest my dad actually ever drove me to go race was Colorado for Rotax Grands in '07. But other than that, we were always kind of regional racers, and our whole plan was to not overspend so I can go car racing. And I did that full time at the age of 12.
Oh, wow.
So stepped away from karting, and then got into legend cars. So that was my first race car. Ran those, and that's what a lot of kids were coming out of karting, going into legend cars, or at the time ASA speed trucks were big in circle track racing, or people were doing Formula Renault 1600s or something like that. So did that whole route, went super late model racing, got some NASCAR Rookie of the Year awards, some track records and whatnot, and had a lot of success throughout the stock car world.
Well, before you continue down your resume here, my man, let's go back a little bit here to that karting stuff. When you were a munchkin, did you already I'm going to move my way up through the ladder? Like that was as a little guy all the way up. Were you automatically doing that, like in your head?
That was the goal. I mean,
Yeah.
I loved racing. That's literally the only thing I ever really tried. I mean, he put me in T-ball when I was a kid, and I hated it. I think I did like 1 or 2 days. I'm like, this is stupid.
Running sucks.
Well, it was just
It's so
like,
hard
why-
to hit the ball.
Not even. I was like, you just have to hit it off a post.
Yeah,
That's all you have
That's
to do.
the joke race.
Right.
I'm like, are you serious? That's what you want me to play instead of going to the go-kart track? What's your problem?
So you
Did you take to the karting pretty good?
It took me until I was about 6, which, I mean, whatever, it's a year, into it.
Yeah.
It's a 5-year-old. I don't know what you expect, but I think I won my first race when I was like later in my 6th year of living.
Of existence.
Yeah, at least first go-kart race at that age. And I think 7 is really when it started clicking, at least at that level. And it honestly didn't like really, really click to where I felt like I was competitive on a national level until I was about 13 or 14.
But by then you were already looking to do the car stuff, right?
Yeah, but we were still racing go-karts when we could. We'd always commit to Andy's series, the Gatorz Rotax stuff.
Yeah.
We do Vegas. I'd always race anything that came to Willow Springs because it was, local. I could stay in my own bed. Streets of Lancaster, stuff like that. So,
Right.
it didn't really click actually until I got in a car. It was just, if anybody hasn't been in a race car, it's so different. There's so much weight transfer. It takes a lot more to really drive a race car into a corner than a kart. So when I got back in a go-kart, I didn't have that fear I had, or
Right.
intimidation, I guess, that I had before. So
I've kind of told guys that have come out here and from cars to karting, I'm like, you almost got to dumb yourself down a little bit. I'm like, don't think about the weight or anything like that, because that's kind of the first thing everyone.
Like if they've already had time in a car.
Yeah, I'm like, just go drive the thing. I'm
Well,
like,
especially in bloody sport carts, mate. You're not
Yeah,
gonna
for
have
sure.
freaking all this weight transfers. Like, just relax, okay?
Yeah.
Like, man, I got on the brakes and it spun out. Is all the weight got on the nose? No, it's got a solid rear axle. You slammed on the brake, it spun out.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bunch of weight going on the nose.
yeah, we're not on the bump stops.
Yeah, you're overthinking it a little bit. When you're a kid, you're watching NASCAR and things like that on TV and stuff like that. Are you a race fan as a kid?
Yeah, religiously.
Okay.
I took to really becoming a huge Jeff Gordon fan at a young age.
Nice.
Loved everything about the guy through his whole career, and really held on to that. Michael Schumacher, obviously, like anybody.
Right. Yeah.
Me too, on both counts, actually.
My dad is a big Ayrton Senna fan, so we'd watch reruns and stuff like that of his races. So I was into it. I loved it, every second of it.
My dad would do the same thing, but with Nigel Mansell. He was
Okay.
a huge Mansell fan, so he had all the VHS tapes of like his biggest wins.
That's awesome.
And I remember watching that. That shit was cool. The
Super
old school
cool.
stuff, man. I love
Those
that.
were drivers.
Yeah.
There was nothing like that.
Well, the
Yeah.
equipment back then too.
Well, even
with
like
all
on
the
the
electronics and shit.
Yeah, exactly. And like you get on a sim now and you can still drive like those old cars. And granted, I don't know how accurate they are.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like the accuracy on some of the cars I really have driven that are on the game are pretty close. Like
Right.
good enough. And you get in one of those classics, those old F1 cars, and you're like, how the hell?
Was it the
these
Lotus
guys
49
drive?
on
Yeah.
iRacing? I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, that's a death trap.
and
That is
impossible.
that thing's
and
such
you
a
think
bitch.
about Senna getting around Monaco, and with one of those kind of cars, the old Lotus, like
Yeah.
79, I think they have on the
Right.
whatchamacallit. But I mean, no traction control, a stupid amount of power, no traction. I mean, not a lot of
brakes.
grip.
To be fast on that thing, you're on the edge the whole time.
Yeah.
And I think you're on the edge because whether you want to be or not, the thing's just going to do
not
it,
a lot
right?
of downforce.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
Yeah. So imagine driving that around. That takes a man.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty crazy, some of that kind of stuff. So you're a kid and you are all in racing. This is what I want to do when I get older. You joked earlier about your name in school and whatnot. can I assume that you weren't like, I'm going to college and I'm doing all those other kinds of stuff, or like what was the education game like for you?
Basically, I stared at the clock until I could go to the shop to help my dad work on something.
Yeah.
Because he had a full race shop. We prepped a couple guys, he prepped at the time a couple guys Formula cars and some stock car stuff, and he kind of whatever he can get his hands on, and a lot of go-kart stuff. So that was the highlight of my day, was going to the shop, whether I was helping him or I was riding my pit bike around the parking lot or whatever.
Just being around it.
Yeah, just being around it on something with a motor. That's really all I cared about. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't. I was actually a pretty smart kid in school. I didn't get the best of grades because I didn't really see science wasn't going to do nothing for me in my future because I was going to be a race car driver.
Right.
So I focused all of my attention really on racing. I got through school at least. But yeah, college was not in the plans at all. It was, if we had some extra money, we were going to go try and, do an ARCA test or something that was going to hopefully excel my career. And that was it.
Yeah, all in the car racing game at that point.
100%. In racing in general, that's the only thing I've ever really thought about. I've tried. I've had other jobs. I've had other hobbies. I raced motocross for a long time, and I fell in love with that sport too. But everything led right back to automotive racing, and it was actually it was kind of what I was best at out of all those things. So
why fight it?
Yeah, that's kind of what stuck. I was going to try and make it work.
Going back to early days of karting, or just like the kid kart to cadet status. You said you didn't have a ton of money for the karting budget. You were trying to stay local and you'd save up for the bigger races. Did you guys align with any teams, or were you kind of do everything out of your own garage?
In 1998, there was no teams. There was, it was a different time. Karting's definitely changed, and it's funny, you see people cycle through the sport every 5 or 6 years, whether they move into cars or find another hobby if they're just in it for the fun or whatever, right? And then you see some that stick forever. But back then, there really wasn't many teams, so all of our go-karts came secondhand from a kid named Stefan Sierra, who was a badass back in the junior days when I was kind of growing up in the sport. He had good stuff, so my dad always knew it was going to be solid if we bought it used after a year, and that was my new go-kart.
Gotcha.
So we did it all on our own. My dad, like I said, my dad's really knowledgeable. We had a really nice shop. I've been very fortunate as well. We may not have had the money to go racing across the world, but my dad, with his intelligence in the industry, he built all my engines. He kind of grew up with Mark Zartarian, actually, so he learned a lot from him. They were really good friends, so they both knew a lot about engines and whatnot. And then, it was just him and I. The whole time I had one teammate that actually helped fund my racing at one point. So my dad actually brought
like
one
customer,
person,
essentially, yeah.
Yeah, one guy to us.
Right.
And that was at that age, I was 11 at the time. I just was moving up to junior the next year. And part of the deal became, if I wanted to race, that I had to prep his go-kart before I touched mine.
Oh, gotcha.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, and that was the deal. So it became now an effort of mine. He's trying to teach me lessons on how to really make this happen and what it takes. And
is that the first time you started turning wrenches, or had you been doing it for a while as a munchkin?
So the first time he really let me turn many wrenches, I always wanted to. He was more or less, and I didn't get it at the time when you're 9 years old and you're like, Dad, let me take that engine apart. He's like, no. Not happening.
I need it to
like,
actually work.
Yeah, I'm like, what the heck, dude? I can do it. Like, it's only like 4 nuts, really. Yeah. So he didn't entrust in me at that time. Same thing. I'm always like, let me TIG weld, and he's like, no, not yet. So it wasn't until I was I think I was 11. I ended up selling an engine to a guy on eBay. At the time, this is sad to admit, but I was into bowling when I was like 12. My cousin's a professional bowler, so
oh shit.
So I enjoyed doing that with him and learning, because if anything I do, I want to be the best at. So he was really good, and I'm like, I'm gonna beat him. So I'm like, Dad, I need this bowling ball, and it was like $500. Well, we had like this comber laying around that was in pieces. And at the time, combers were still a thing. So
right, yeah.
He goes, well, if you can put it back together and sell it on eBay, I'll let you have that money towards the bowling ball you want. I'm like, sweet. So I'm like, well, you have to teach me how to build it. So he taught me how to, hone the cylinder, measure the piston size of the cylinder, and just little stuff like that. We put it together. And
At what age, sorry?
11.
11.
Yeah, so I was already in junior, so combers were useless to us at that point. So put that whole thing together. Made sure it ran. He called the guy and goes, "Hey, my son built this. He's 11. It's nothing special."
Practice motor.
And the guy's like, "No worries. It's for a rental cart anyways. It's just supposed to turn laps."
Brilliant.
So it was perfect setting. So yeah, moral of the story is I got my bowling ball and he didn't blow up the engine because we never heard from him again. But
That's awesome.
so that's when I started wrenching.
How'd the bowling go?
Well, I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I do it for fun. I'm a good, like, if we're going like, oh, let's go bowling, or with your
You're a
group
good
of people,
ringer.
I'm like,
you got that, and you're like, oh yeah, I never bowl, and you're just secretly going, I'm gonna kick the shit out of these guys.
yeah, pretty well. It's when I show up with my bag of bowling balls, and they're
I was
like,
about to
"Are you
say.
serious?"
You're me. You're the one who shows up with your helmet at the indoor track. Like, what
Yeah.
I'm like? You show-
Absolutely. Sometimes I like to go
and
rogue.
I'm gonna
but
kill it.
Go rogue. Use a rental helmet.
Yeah,
I hate wearing the rental helmet, man.
I feel gross.
I could, exactly. No.
It won't
But
happen.
it is.
That's the way
it
I
is
feel
pretty
about
funny though.
the bowling shoes. I haven't been bowling for years, but I feel like if I bought anything, I'd use anybody else's ball because I don't know
Yeah,
two
who
shits
cares?
about what the hell's going on. But the shoes, it's
They
always
do the Clorox. They got the guy behind there
At least you're
constantly spraying
wearing
them down.
socks. That's the only thing that kept
Yeah.
it okay for me.
You could
It's like
double
an
sock
ass
it.
gasket on a toilet.
Right.
But
It's all peace of mind.
yeah, first thing I did buy was shoes though, because I was like, yeah, and actually it makes a difference.
Of course,
All
I'm sure
right.
it does.
So-
They wouldn't have them out there if it didn't make a bloody difference.
Exactly. So no, but I can bowl like a 250 on average. So
Wow.
I'm
On
not-
average?
not maybe if I get back into it, right? If I
Yeah.
practice for like a couple games, I could probably keep going 240s, 250s.
Man.
So
Oh wow.
that's about where I tap though.
If I
You're
got
more
a
like.
200, I'd be stoked. I'm like a $150 to $180.
I think we'd have a good game.
Even
like
that's
golf.
pretty good though.
Even golf, I'd be like, nah, I'll just watch.
There's plenty of people that are stoked to see triple digits.
Oh,
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
$180 is pretty damn good.
Here at the FCP, we like to talk about golf and bowling is more than we do karting.
Golf is one thing I've never ever done.
It
That's
is.
what this guy's
dude.
gotten into it.
I just started picking it back up last year, and it's a ton of fun.
Really?
Yeah.
I like going to the driving range or like Top Golf. I think that's a lot of fun.
Well, there's a lot of drinking involved at Top Golf too, so that helps.
Yeah.
I
Well, I heard
imagine
there's a lot of drinking going on at golf.
Yeah. Fair.
golf courses too.
This
so.
guy's asking he wants me to go out there and be his golf cart
Just-
driver.
just
hang
drive
out
me
and
around
see-
and
that
hang out
would
and
be
drink.
fun, but
Yeah.
it'd turn into a Jackass episode if I went.
Yeah.
Right. No, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. Anyway, circling back to karting here. You're as a munchkin, your dad's doing the shop thing, whatnot. I want to ask you, did he kart? I know you had said that he had done the car stuff, but did he ever do the karting thing as well?
Yeah, he road raced.
Yeah?
He never really sprint raced. Like when I was a kid, he'd go out on track with me and show me lines or drive around. He had a Rotax Senior when I was in Mini Max, so he did race once in a while. I used to watch him. He'd go race Big Willow every time NCK would come down to Big Willow
Right.
and have a road race, and he enjoyed that. He really loves that. He still actually, it's odd, he took like a 10 or 15 year hiatus when I was really, really serious in my racing career. And now, actually, I think last year there was a big event at Speed Vegas.
Yeah? Did he go to that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
he went.
cool.
Yeah, so he's got a DD2 that he's got road racing gears in, and he
Nice.
rips that thing around and has a good time.
I had no
Nice.
idea. So, I mean, is that where a lot of the coaching then came from you? Or, like, as you were getting up, I assume that he was kind of coaching you up, that you didn't just figure it out on yourself.
Yeah, he was my biggest mentor for sure. He may not have had like the most extensive karting career for himself, but he did teach a lot of very talented drivers that went on to do IndyCar stuff and whatnot.
Oh,
so
wow.
he was a good instructor, at least, or a good, like I said, he was kind of my main source of motivation as a kid. So
Right.
he always pushed me really, really, really hard. That's the same thing I was getting back to earlier. It was a different time, for sure. The parents were rough.
Yeah.
And my dad was rough on me, for sure. But that's actually, I've got drivers now that their parents are hard on them, and it just reminds me of my childhood. But I think that's why they may be so good, is because, it's hard work. It really is.
But it
Right.
was something you wanted to do. It's not like he
Absolutely.
was twisting your arm to go out there.
No. He would never do that because, honestly, he'd save money if I didn't want to do it. So.
Nice.
But yeah, he helped me the most along the way. I never had a mechanic. I never had a coach. I think we had at one national, we had a mechanic and slash coach, and that was Kyle Longmore, who you guys probably don't even know who he is, but he's a badass. If you ask Matty J about him, they went back and forth pretty
Yeah.
hard. So,
Oh, cool.
he was with me once in a while, and a teammate of mine. I did finally join a team. When I was 11, I got a ride with KRT, which was Mark Zartarian's chassis line, and ran under them in the high rev banner. We still did our own thing. We never pitted under anybody's tent. My dad preferred to be alone. He wanted to be by ourselves. He believed in our program. If we needed something or had a problem,
You had some support though.
we would go. Yeah, absolutely. And I had teammates that kind of helped me along the way. You know, we had Connor DeFelipe was on the team at the time, who is now a professional race car driver and a very, very decorated go-kart driver. Kyle Longmore was another one. Lindsey Kernahan was another talented driver that was on the team, and et cetera. So I got some good pointers through those times. And then moved on to a couple different chassis brands along the way, and you know, met some different people that always have something to say. You know, you learn something new every day, no matter how good you are, no matter how much you think you know. There's always somebody that's got a little tip here, a little pointer there that could really make a pretty big difference. So, I mean, in today, I still learn stuff every day.
Right.
You said that when you were 11 is when you got on that KRT team.
Yep.
And so you're making that move to juniors. So it's about that same time that you went juniors and into this other team.
It was my first new go-kart, 1, and 2 is my first junior kart was the KRT. So we went straight from cadet, had some good success actually in cadet. Then there wasn't really a SCUSA program, which is now what we all think is, you know as the pinnacle of karting. It was
Gatorz back then?
Well, Gatorz was big. Gatorz was more of a regional series. You get some qualification points to go to a national for the Rotax stuff, but it was a good regional program, solid regional program. We ran that a lot. Won the Minimax Championship in that once.
Oh, wow.
And then WK was pretty big too.
Right. Yeah,
So we ran some IKF and WK stuff.
That's when in NorCal there was basically like every track, even down here, in every track there was a club, and it was actually fairly big, right?
Yeah. Club racing was huge. I mean, our Willow Springs Kart Club would still get 150 entries, and some people from SoCal haven't even been to Willow Springs, in karting
We
careers.
just went.
During the shutdown.
Yeah, right at the end of the shutdown before they were going to do SCUSA there.
Yeah.
That was our first time.
Yeah. And
See?
fun little track.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That was
It
a good
needs
time.
repaved, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was kart clubs everywhere. I mean, Adams had a good kart club. Moran at the time, rest in peace, Moran, best track ever. That kart club, which was Tri-C at the time, actually,
Right.
they had huge numbers,
yeah.
and it was cool because we all didn't really travel too far to one another. Like you didn't see too many kids from Tri-C at Gold Coast Karters, which was Willow's club.
Except for when IKF would move around,
Right.
right? That's the one time everybody you basically stayed at your club.
Yep, and you
Unless
ran IKF.
right.
Yep, and that was huge. That was cool. It was such a different, just way of racing. So we had everybody had their clubs. They all kind of stayed local, just like they do here at Cal Speed. But when the regional came to town, you at least entered that regional,
Right. Yeah.
to see what you had, and then maybe the next year you ran regional racing, and then qualified for the nationals. So it was a different time. You had to qualify for everything too.
You had
so
to get
speak.
punches and whatnot.
Yeah. You had to run 3 Region 7 races, and I think make the A main because at one time there were B mains.
Right.
To then qualify for a spot at the Grand Nationals, and if you were a Grand National winner, you became an IKF expert, which
Right.
you didn't need punches. It was actually a pretty cool step ladder.
Right.
But it worked. It worked really well at the time in karting because there's so many successful kart clubs across the southern part of the West Coast that then we'd all come together and you're like, oh my God, who's this guy? Who's this
Right,
guy?
yeah.
Because there was a kart club at Buttonwillow, Willow Springs. Cal Speed wasn't a thing. It was still
Right.
Irwindale actually at the time. They had a
That
kart.
was LAKC.
That was LAKC.
Yeah.
It was right after Saugus Speedway, so it was around that time. Cal Speed was becoming a thing, I think, like the following year or so. Like, it was, I wanna say
2000. LAKC moved here in 2005.
5. Yeah. So
Well, they had the
around-
last couple. We just did the Rob Niles episode, and he said like the last race or
The last
two
like
of 4,
2 rounds of them.
and
Yeah.
then
That
they
they
kicked
got- came
over
here.
after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so that, and I didn't race here until like 2007.
Yeah.
But I remember that 2005. This came here, and so we had successful kart clubs all through Southern California. I think Adams had a pretty good little deal going. And then
You'd
all
have those track
guys,
champions. Right?
Yes.
Being a track champion meant something because
Absolutely.
you're beating a solid group versus, unfortunately now, right? There's not as many clubs and things like that all over the place. So like the track championship thing isn't as much as a series champ because you don't have a big series at every single track
Absolutely.
anymore.
Yeah. So it's different. So you'd see the kid, oh, that's the champion from Willow, or
Right.
that's
Right.
the champion from Buttonwillow. That guy's from Moran.
That's cool.
And it was like a territorial thing now.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
pretty sweet, actually. It really was.
And I remember back then there was also when Pro Kart was happening, it was the North versus South deal that happened right in the middle of the season, which I read about, and I thought maybe that was couple years later. I can't
That
remember
was
exactly.
that was like 2010.
Was it that late?
Like 8, 9, 10.
Okay.
Around there. Yeah. Yeah. Because when I raced SCUSA, so SCUSA used to be only shifter karts. It was shifter cadet, shifter junior,
Right.
senior, masters, whatever. The only shifters. That was it.
All right.
And I raced in that in 80cc restricted cadet, which was
I heard that was the shit.
it was so fun.
Yeah.
It was so fun. I wasn't very good in cadet and shifters. I really wasn't. But like Cameron Jocelyn, badass.
He was
Cadet
good, yeah,
shifters,
from what I heard.
Super good.
Is it him
Right.
and Connor?
Yeah,
Or like the
that's right.
Connor, yep. D.
Tip top,
Felipe,
yeah.
Yep. D. Felipe was good. Cole Witt was
Right.
badass in that. A kid named Zach Zimmerly was
Yeah,
really
from my
good.
neck of the woods, actually.
Yeah. So Zimmerly was one of the top guns. So a lot of talent came through that class. 80cc junior before my time, when it was more or less the norm on the national stuff, was the best. I mean, Joey Hand and all those guys came through those ranks. Ryan Finney, Kyle Longmore, a bunch of other names. Robert Podlesny. That was like a huge, amazing class. No front brakes.
Right.
And I think they were on 6-inch tires at the time
Get out.
in 80cc.
Well, I mean, I
shifter.
guess it's still a. You said it was a junior or that was the cadet?
That was junior.
Okay.
At one point, there was
They still
almost
had
like
the
no
6-inch?
710s. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Yamaha, all that. HPVs,
I guess that's
all
true.
6-inch.
Yeah. When did they do sevens?
It was probably like 06, 07.
Was it that
really,
late?
It really transitioned to everything. I believe. I might be wrong. I was still a kid, right? So I was
Right.
still like 12.
They're all black and round. I don't know.
Right. So it didn't matter to me. I wasn't buying them either. So
Or mounting them, I would assume.
none of that. None of that. But
Cars ready? Perfect.
yeah,
I'll see you in a few.
Sweet.
So you're like I said, you're planning on trying to move on up, right? That's the whole thing. You say you win a mini max championship in cadets. Is that kind of the shining achievement in cadets? And then to piggyback off of that, how did the juniors go?
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't very great in cadet racing. So like I had some top 5s and top 10s in IKF, and I won a lot of stuff in WK at a young age. But we actually missed. I don't know why my dad did this. I still don't get it. But we were leading the points in 2 WK classes. We ran 4 classes at WK, so I ran 60.
Fairly regular thing back then. Yeah.
It was 80cc shifter cadet, HPV1, Yamaha cadet, and Comer 80, all in the same weekend.
Wow.
And that was normal for a lot of people, at least
Right,
2 or
yeah.
3. Because
Yeah.
we had a full race day Saturday and a full race day Sunday, but different classes.
Right.
So we were leading the points in 2 of the 4, and he decided that the Gatorz championship was worth more to us. Which, okay, whatever. So we did that. So we were in the points lead for that too. Same weekend was the finale.
Oh,
so
man.
ended up still winning one of the WK classes because my whatever opponent at the time wrecked or whatever. So still won one class there and the mini max championship for Gatorz. And we were really we were dedicated to Andy throughout my junior ranks. Andy, as we know, he runs such a fun show.
Right.
Yeah.
And my dad and him got along great. So we really focused on that program. And then when I got to junior, I won the Junior Rotax Championship at Gatorz the following year, which was
Okay.
actually probably the coolest thing I won in junior because I got a test day in a Formula Renault 1600 out
Oh,
of it
wow.
Oh, cool.
At,
Yeah.
At what age?
at 12.
Get out of
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I just turned 12 when I got to test it.
Wow.
Wow.
So
who was that with?
that was with actually the Goshen family.
Why does that sound familiar?
They were big into karting throughout. Kind of grew up with me.
Yeah.
Billy Goshen, the older brother, had a lot of success in 80 Junior, but they went on to car racing and whatnot. And kind of the typical story.
and that was your first. Was that your first time in a car?
First time in any car. Yeah,
Wow.
It was a
Oh,
Formula
wow.
Renault.
That had to be a
1600.
hell of a spark right there.
It was cool.
Yeah, right.
It was a lot of fun. So I was, and actually I don't love Formula car racing. I've raced a few. I've raced one time, but I've driven a lot of Formula cars, and it's not my cup of tea. The driving style is completely different, and I did not take to it, but I didn't love it.
Is it the downforce? We might go down a rabbit hole here, but what was it?
It's the braking, honestly.
Oh, really?
There's no threshold, real hard braking like you kind of learn at a young age in a car. You immediately hit the brakes and you immediately bleed off the brake pedal. It's because of the downforce. You're using all that downforce that you have to stop the car as quick as possible,
Right.
and then as the downforce decreases with
You gotta let up.
mile an hour, you got to start letting off the brake.
Right.
And they roll a lot of speed through the center of the corner,
Right.
versus so much setting up the corner and back to the power, kind of like what we do in karting. So I just didn't love it. It wasn't
Yeah.
like my thing, and I didn't like that downforce was really your grip, right? You lose it, you're done, kind
Yeah.
of thing. So just wasn't my cup of tea, but I enjoyed, I got amazing experience. I got to work with Richie Hearn was my driver coach for the day.
Oh,
Nice.
cool.
And who's a good family friend, but at the time it was awesome that Richie Hearn was
Yeah.
coaching me. And learned a lot, but more or less it told me that wasn't the route I wanted to take. And at the time, I didn't say I had like a harsh childhood, because it wasn't. It was great. But when I say this, like, my dad always sat me down and was like, this is what this costs. I knew kind of what we were getting into and knew how committed I had to be for us to justify doing this. Because if it was just a hobby, then we'd stay at LAKC the rest of our lives, which is fine for a lot of people.
Right.
But if he was going to make the financial investment, we had to have sit downs as to, my commitment to our business, as well as my karting and racing career.
So yeah, kind of maybe expanding on that. So at 12 years old, you get a chance to you win the junior championship at Gatorz. Mm-hmm. Are you doing other karting at the time as well? And just maybe that's the one that you won, and you got the test and whatnot.
Yeah.
So you guys still have the shop, and is he still doing the prep on these other cars and things like that? All that stuff still happening?
The car stuff kind of went. So he also had a construction company, which was his main deal. But to keep the lights on in the shop, because at the time we were renting a shop, we didn't have one now like we do now in the back of his house. Mm-hmm. To keep the lights on, everything, he's pretty good with his money. Actually, he doesn't like spending it. He just needs to justify keeping it.
You were probably the worst thing that happened to him, actually, financially.
Financially, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm probably the worst investment he's ever made.
Are you an only child?
No.
How many other siblings you got?
So he's got one other daughter, and I have a total of 4 siblings.
Okay, gotcha.
But yes, his daughter, my sister, did not do much. She's just a typical, I don't want to say typical girl, but she just kind of, she played softball for a year or two and cheered for a year or two and just kind of tried some other things. And
he had to buy her a baseball bat. He just had to keep buying you go-karts.
Yeah.
He
put her in a go-kart, to be fair. But I lapped her like 10 times in her first session. She started crying and hated it. So I didn't want her doing it either. I hated it. I did not want it to happen.
You didn't want to share any of it?
No.
Yeah.
Is she younger than you?
Yeah, she's 2 years younger.
2 years?
Yeah.
And is she, was college her thing or whatnot?
No, she does hair for a living, so that's what she enjoys.
Yeah?
She's social, so she does that stuff, and loves it. So
she's not mad at you for taking all the family money.
No, because my dad balanced it pretty well. I mean, he knew when he was home with, we weren't racing or he wasn't working, she deserved some attention, good attention, because we were at the shop all night some nights and stuff like that. So he tried to balance it the best he could. And I got that. I didn't get it.
You allowed it.
Yeah, I was like, no, it's fine. You go. Yeah. You guys have your
clocked
time.
out, I guess.
I'm gonna go play video games.
Yeah, you're like, I'll give you from 4 to 5 on a Tuesday.
Nice.
That's
about it.
Yeah, we had a schedule.
The race ran at 12 years old.
No, it was easier than that. But yeah, he put a lot of time into me. Like I said, I raced go-karts and motocross at the same time at one point in my life when I was 9, 10 years old. And
yeah, how did that come about? How do you get into the motocross? Is this a fun thing on the side, and then you're like, oh shit, this is actually pretty fun?
That's what it started out as, yeah. A good friend of mine that I grew up with at the local kart club at Willow Springs, he raced motocross, and that's actually what he was really good at. And he was, so getting into karting. So my dad was like, hey, let's go watch, because LACR is in Palmdale. So he was racing that weekend, and we went out there. I'm like, dude, I want to do this. And, an 8, 9-year-old, I don't understand what money is.
Right.
I just see some kid jumping dirt bikes. I'm like, this is cool. I'd like to try it. So he bought me a dirt bike, and we would, again, at the time, we didn't do much national or regional racing. We kind of stayed more local. So we would go race the club on a Saturday. My bikes were in the back of the trailer already with my go-karts. So we had bikes and go-karts.
Nice.
And we would go home, sleep it off, wake up the next morning, be at the dirt bike track. And that's what we did for 2 or 3 years until he started seeing his little 10-year-old jumping 60-foot triples and kids racking their brains. And he was like, yeah, we're done. So,
Did he at least get you a motorcycle that fit you? Because I know Mike Johnson didn't get Matt one that fit him. He got him a full size when he was about,
here you go,
4
kid.
foot tall.
Figure it out.
Yeah, no, he didn't do that, because we took it really seriously. So motocross was at the time, I don't know what it is now, but it was a little bit cheaper for us to go run at a bigger level,
Gotcha.
So the budget was about the same. If you were to even it out, we could go run pretty national stuff for motocross. Mm-hmm. So we ran some big races, and I actually took to it pretty well at one point. And once, I grew up racing with Trey Kennard and Josh Grant and a couple of the guys that went big time. I raced them when I was 8 years old, because we were all the same age, right? So we grew up through Pee-wees together, which is what the mini class is called. And I won a couple regional championships and stuff, and it was time to really take it seriously. And like I said, we were hitting really big jumps. As
I was to say the
8,
risk
9-year-old.
factor just got too high then, huh?
Yeah, and that's where he kind of was like, listen, dude, here's the deal. You're going to break a lot of bones here. It's going to happen. Everybody does.
Again, being very frank. As he was
Right.
with the financials, he's being very frank with the risks.
Absolutely.
Got
Yeah,
it.
he's always been very like real with me when it comes to anything. Age didn't really matter. So, he put the risk factor out there. The financial factor is one or the other kind of thing. And he, which one was I really, truly better at? And we went with karting. So, and it was more or less the risk factor of it because he's right. I mean, I've seen a lot of my friends really ruin their bodies and a lot of professional athletes retire at 30 years old because they're ruined. They're wasted.
Everything's worn out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know if I would have gone pro doing that or anything, but I'm happy with the move we made and, the way my future turned out and kind of where I'm at now. So
You ended up on this podcast, so it's not too bad.
Yeah,
listen, I've made it.
Yeah, this is it. This is basically
I've
it's
made
all.
it.
It's unfortunately we didn't mean to. I mean, it goes downhill from here. It's all. You might as well just shut the doors. It's it's game over.
The wrong kind of press gets put out about you all this kind
That's
of shit.
right.
They do
Yeah.
say go out on top, and what better way?
So you've got at 10 years old or so, you end up shit canning the motocross thing, but obviously we skip forward to the 12-year-old getting a chance to do the car deal. I talked about that spark, and you talked about okay, the car thing's cool. That was a hell of a lot of fun. Maybe it doesn't click so much. Do you really know that it doesn't click until you try a different kind of car, though?
So it's not that it didn't click. Like actually, they were really impressed with my lap times. I don't remember at all what they were, but I was always really good as a young age. I'd say my biggest I don't know what I was best at. My feedback was good, and I would take direction pretty well. I would listen. So they helped me out throughout the day, and I was only about a second off a race pace my first time in the car at 12, never sitting in the thing. So
Yeah.
I was pretty stoked on that. My dad was really happy, and they tried, typical after that's a business deal, trying to get you for the season and
Right.
whatnot. So we walked away from that because we just honestly didn't have the budgets. I think it was like $200,000 a year or something to do that stuff. So that's when Marco, I would have been racing Marco Andretti and a bunch of those guys in that era. We just knew we couldn't compete.
You remember what track that was at?
Buttonwillow.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, that's where I did a lot of my Formula Car test stuff when I was younger. So once that wasn't really my thing per se, we rented a Legend car, did that deal. I enjoyed it a lot. Our path, again, we had the hard sit down of this is how much it'll cost us to go NASCAR racing or hopefully get to that level.
Right.
This is what Formula Car racing will look like. We can afford to do half a season of Formula Car racing or 3 seasons of stock car racing.
And so you're like
Formula car, of course.
Right, exactly. He's like, wait, 3 times a year
Yeah.
or 24 times a year?
Right.
a little bit of Michael or a lot of Jeff.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I got
Exactly.
you. And because you had a little bit of that both, like on 2 different spectrums, you liked racing. It wasn't like you were picking something you didn't like. You were already like, okay, I could be, Jeff Gordon or whatever.
Yeah, well, my goal through my whole life was not necessarily like, there's some kids that say, I want to be a Formula One driver. I don't give a shit at the end of the day. If we were paying, if I could get, I don't even honestly care about the money. I never did. I wanted to be the best driver in the world. That's all I ever wanted. So I didn't care if I was, racing shopping carts around a Walmart, and that's where the best drivers in the world were. I'd do it. So that's kind of my whole mentality of it is I don't give a shit where I go. I just want to be the best at what I do, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So that's it. I want to be in a car. So we went to, we did the circle track route and had some good success. And
And this is all at 12 to 13? This
Yeah.
is starting to happen? Okay.
And this is the Legends.
Yeah, Legend cars. So we did it on our own. And again, that was probably a bad idea. But because we didn't, going from go-karts, it's as hard as it really is on some days, as you guys know, to get a go-kart set up right. It's a lot harder to get a race car set up right.
And even with your dad, and we haven't said, I think Brian's name.
Brian, yeah.
Even with Brian's experience with setup of the other cars, the other Formula car stuff like that, it was still going to be a new deal for him. Had he done any Legend stuff up to that point?
No.
And this is
No.
with the motorcycle engines, right?
Yes, they have the
Yamaha?
1250cc air-cooled Yamahas. Now they're running like what are they running? They're running a 3-cylinder water-cooled engine now. But, 1250cc.
Those things are fun.
They
I had
are.
to drive one a while ago at Irwindale.
Yeah,
that was a good time.
And they're difficult. They're hard to drive. So,
It's a decent amount of power and whatnot, and not a lot of rubber, I believe, right?
so it's a treaded tire, and it's
Right.
a street tire. So now they're a lot more sticky, held to the track. The tires are. the tires we ran on were BF Goodrich's, which were the same thing you can go to a tire store and buy, and you had to drive the car sideways. That was kind of like the Skip Barber car on iRacing. You're always sideways on the thing, right? So it's the same thing. So it really taught you how to drive. And it wasn't too much weight because I coach a lot of racers now that move to cars, and the biggest thing is the weight transfer. We don't feel that in karting. You really get an understanding of it in a car, and a Legend car was just enough of a step to really get your feet wet and understand what rollover on the car is, what it feels like, because it feels like the car is getting loose. It's just rolling over on the tire, right? So just learning those things and how far you could push it, the Legend car was amazing for. And to answer your question, the only experience my father had circle track racing was my uncle Darren raced the ASA Speed Truck Series. As I was a kid, he'd go help him out once in a while. So he still wasn't like super into it, but he would go help him out and learned a little bit along the way. But for the most part, we had to learn everything about the Legend car, which we never did.
Oh, yeah.
So we struggled a little bit. But
How long did you do it for?
2.5, 3 years, full time.
So from the time you're 12-ish to
it was like 14.
Damn near 16? Oh,
it was more or less 2.5 to 3 years. Like we had them and we'd race them on our off weekend, but for the most part, I stopped at 14 because that's the age I can get in the speed truck.
Okay.
So we did that, and that was the whole idea. He goes, listen, do I want to win races? Cool. Yeah. Does anybody at NASCAR give a shit if you win a Legend car race? No.
So, when you guys got into Legends, it was the all-in ladder. This is what we're doing right here.
Yep.
Got it.
We were committed. So, and it's funny because now I look a lot at sports car racing because I grew up with a lot of kids that made it in sports cars. I'm like, why didn't we go over there?
Right.
Yeah.
Why did we not look at that whole avenue? Because my
Right.
dad thought Miatas
Those
for
Formula
women.
cars.
Right, yeah.
Nice.
I said my dad, not me.
He's not on the show.
No, he's not. So yeah, that we were committed to that. I love the ASA speed trucks because again, I watched my uncle Darren race them a lot.
Yeah.
And
There was a lot of trucks back then.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean,
a lot of karters came through it too.
Cameron Jocelyn did it. We actually, I don't know if you know, Pat Britton did it when it was kind of dying off.
Yep.
A few other people that did it, and it was, and they did not just ovals, they did some road courses as well.
Oh yeah. They did 2 road course races a year. It was one of the only series that traveled that did a road course race. And the car count was, when I grew up watching it, 50, 60 sometimes. They had
Wow.
B mains.
Whoa.
Average was like 35 to 40. So the field was there.
Yeah.
Were they traveling with like the Southwest Tour, or what were they doing? They had their own.
They had
deal?
their own traveling
Did
series.
they?
So it was sanctioned by ASA. And they would travel primarily around the West Coast. So Tucson, Irwindale, what wasn't Kern County, it was Mesa Marin at one point. They travel around. They did the road course races at Firebird every year. I think they had one other one. But anyways, yeah, they traveled around the southern west side of the states. And it was just an awesome, popular series. It was one of the first series with a spec engine, spec chassis kind of thing.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
program and all that stuff. So it was somewhat inexpensive to get into.
Yeah, and maybe the learning curve was a little bit
Less.
tighter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit. I mean, granted, these guys, there's a lot you can do to a race car. But
You don't have to worry about buying this shock or buying these tires. It's the same.
Right. It's all the same spec stuff. Engines were spec, transmissions were spec, rear ends were spec. So it was pretty cool. And a lot of go-karters went through it. Brandon Underwood, another successful go-kart driver. Yep, he went through that. We all kind of grew up together. Dylan Kwasniewski, who went on to do some NASCAR stuff. He was an old karter. So a lot of karting kids went through that. Louis Pagano had a truck for a while.
Oh, okay.
But you could tell all of us with our parents working on it were not as fast. We didn't have crew chiefs. We didn't have, crew members. Me and my dad prepped the truck by ourselves.
Right.
So it showed in the program until he said, we argue a lot about at that point because I was frustrated, right? I felt like I deserved to do better. We just didn't have our stuff together, right? So I got to the point where he goes, well, you get invested in it, then you figure it out. And at that age, I was already kind of interested in figuring things out. I was also, when I did drive go-karts, I happened to still, I was driving for CRG at the time doing some development stuff on the...
Is this all at the same time?
All at the same time.
All right, so I'm on the same page. We've gone from the Legend to the truck at 15-ish?
14, 15.
14, 15, yeah.
And at the same time, you're karting.
Yeah, we're still karting on off weekends because we only race the truck 8 or 9 times a year.
Okay, so you're still doing karting all the way through.
Yeah, we
And-
are committed to, I think, at the time I was doing S5 shifter, which is junior shifter, and Rotax senior, I think I moved up to pretty early.
Were those both with the CRG at the time?
So the Rotax stuff, at the time we were a dealer for CRG, and then my dad finagled his way into getting some free stuff from them to develop, and that's right when I moved to senior shifter.
Gotcha.
So when I moved up to senior shifter, I did some development work for SSC and CRG for the bad boy chassis.
This must have been 15 years old.
Yes. And I was still not the fastest guy around. I was still learning a lot because we weren't really 100% focused on karting anymore. I was still, learning. We weren't at the track 3 days a week or anything like that. So, but I was
and again,
good.
the focus was cars.
Right.
The
In
thought
reality,
process
the vision, the goal was car racing and karting.
was the hobby.
We still took it very, very seriously.
Okay.
But at the same time, we weren't going testing 3 days a week, right?
Right.
When we did our testing and whatnot, we still took it very serious, but it was still kind of our own program. So I did some of that stuff, and like I said earlier, like I wasn't always the fastest kid, but my feedback was really good.
I was gonna say, yeah.
And that's what they needed, really, more than anything. So we did that with CRG for a little while and learned a lot there. And that's really when I started. That ride really is where I took interest in racing, like at the backside of racing, the mechanics of it, the engineering side of it, and things like that. Because
More
I got
than just
to learn.
a driver.
Right. Well, I got to learn from them too, because when we'd make a chassis change, my dad was very involved with all that. Like, hey, what'd you change? What material is this? Whatever. And I would obviously overhear it. My dad would take notes on all this stuff, so we knew what we had or what we were working with, learn from it. And that's when I started really taking an interest in the setup side of things and, the engine work and stuff like that. So I was a little bit more involved than your typical 15-year-old at that point, because now I was hooked. Like, I really enjoyed why the go-kart's fast, why the engine goes faster, and things like that. And then I had to do it for the car too. So he stepped back. He said, listen, this is where my knowledge ends. I'm 55 years old. I don't really even care to learn this. So either we got to find the money to pay somebody to do it, or you need to open the books and start learning it yourself, because it's, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's true to some extent, and he wasn't going to learn anything new.
Well, and kind of going back to what you talked about with school, right? You're like, I just want to see that thing get over because I got another school I like even better.
Right.
Learn about race cars.
Exactly. So I took a huge interest in it, and I got to meet some extremely knowledgeable people, guys that are crew chiefs and shot guys for NASCAR teams now, that kind of mentored me along the way. I had a lot of mentors in the karting world too at the same time. So I was learning a lot, and I was really excited about a lot of it. At school, now I'm in high school, right? So now I'm not, I was definitely thinking about girls at the time, but other than girls at school, I was thinking about race cars, and I was thinking about how to make my race car faster. And in geometry class, I didn't pay attention to geometry class. I was doing race car geometry.
Right.
So that's kind of...
how can I apply that to this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, when they would explain it, because, I'm sure you guys both took geometry, right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's terrible. But there's a lot of word problems. They're talking about acceleration of this or that, or angles and whatnot. And I'm thinking, okay, a third link on a race car, what does that do? Or trailing arms on a race car, or whatever.
And why these angles do what they do, so on and so forth. So
And that's
that
how
application was the big deal for you.
Well, and that's how I figured out the answers of the word problems. I had to put it in race car terms. I couldn't think
How did it
about
make
it
sense
in,
for yourself?
How did Sally put this together with that at what angle? I'm like, I don't know. I know what it would do in a race
Like
car.
at Mason Marin when I'm going through 4.
Right, exactly. When I get on the bars, so that it kind of helped me out, and that's just what I was interested in. That was really it. The math side of things, I learned, again, I'm not like a really smart kid at school. I book smart, not so much, but race car smart, I think I'm all right. So I started crew chief in my own cars, and again, I had a lot of mentors and help.
Who was the crew at the time that you had on your car? You and your dad, obviously. Did you have any outside help that you hired?
Did your uncle jump in the game, or is he?
No,
he was driving
racing against
anyway,
me.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
we were racing against each other.
Oh, man.
So you guys didn't team up? You didn't share data?
No, he drove for a guy. So the guy paid for all of his racing. They had a really, really strong program.
So your uncle's a bit of a wheelman himself. Then.
He's a badass.
Got it.
He's a certified badass.
Is he still racing?
No, he road races go-karts once in a blue moon out at Firebird, but that's kind of it. He kind of stepped away from it. He did it till he was 50 years old and kind of had his life in it. So,
but
moved on.
He was not pulling any punches on 15, 16-year-old Race Liberante.
Oh no, I remember leading a race and he was in my rearview mirror, and I'm like, oh, we're screwed.
Yeah.
Liberante versus Liberante here.
Yeah,
thought
well, he
you were
doesn't have the
leading.
same last name.
Aha.
I was saying,
Okay.
you thought you were leading. He was actually lapping you. You're like, oh, now we're really
He
screwed.
did lap me once.
Did he?
Yeah, that
You
was
came
like
back and you're like, Dad, we got to do something.
yeah,
We
exactly.
can't let that happen again.
Exactly. So
Thanksgiving is going to be a real bitch.
yeah, it's gonna be rough.
Nice. There's going to be blows.
Yeah. So I learned a lot from that. Again, I had mentors. To answer your question, my crew consisted of me, my dad. At the time, we brought on a crew chief who was a good friend of ours named Bob Johns, and Nick Jennings before that, who's the one that worked with Hornaday. And two of my friends from high school came out and, put tires on, took tires off, helped us push the truck. And
Because you don't have
the
live
cars.
pit stops. It's all
No.
behind the wall, in between.
Yeah, exactly. So
And hopefully not during the bloody race.
right. And most of the time, we just needed people to help push the race car.
Right.
So, or jack it up and put it on jack stands and stuff like that. So the work was all done at the shop, and it was just me, Pops, and the crew chief once in a while. But they were all volunteer people, right? So it was all people that were invested in me, and thank you all if you're listening.
Right, yeah.
But sorry I didn't make it.
What a waste of time that was.
Yeah, they're like, God damn it.
Get those weekends back.
Exactly.
But I mean, and also a very cool experience. I mean, the few times I've been able to go to the track. I mean, I grew up with my dad being basically the crew chief for his best friend in high school, and they had a car, a limited sportsman stock car they ran in the late '80s. And I remember being at the shop as a munchkin and just being around it and whatnot. And I remember, I mean, it's basically volunteer status, just like getting a chance to be on this basically club level race car team. And that's kind of bitching.
Yeah, all my friends loved it. We didn't let them touch too many things, but
Right.
but at the end of the day, they wanted to be. They thought it was it was their version of being a NASCAR pit crew member, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
cool. So yeah, I had a lot of friends help us out. We never had a crew chief or anything. I ended up, I'd have to be the one making the phone calls to the shop guy and seeing what he thought and this and that. So I, started logging notes and building relationships at a young age, and won a lot of big races, a lot of championships in the NASCAR short track stuff. Won Rookie of the Year for NASCAR across the country
Is
once.
this all in ASA, the speed truck?
This is past that. Sorry. So NASCAR, that's ASA. NASCAR was the year after. I ran some super late models.
Okay, so
things like
how long
that.
did you do the truck?
A year and a half.
Oh, wow.
That's it.
Oh, wow. That was
Yeah.
short-lived.
And,
Okay.
and did you move on to the late models because it was, quote, time?
So it was all the age thing, honestly.
Oh.
Because now you can get a kid can get in a super late model at 14, or actually 12 years old up in Madeira.
Wow. God.
It was 16 when I was racing. So you
Yeah.
had the natural route was legend cars, speed trucks,
Because
Late model.
speed truck, they were letting you do it at 14.
Yep.
Legends was 12.
Yep.
And so on, so on, so on.
Yep.
And
Once you
because
get
you're trying to
16
move up, as soon as the time is there, you're going to take it.
You have to.
Yeah.
Absolutely have to.
Well, yeah,
But you
if you're-
can't miss the time either, right? So
Right.
Right.
we had to keep getting myself the experience. And that was the plan, right? That's the sit down we had at 12. This is our plan. This has to go a plan. You have to commit to the plan.
Right.
Or else, one thing in the plan fails, we're screwed.
Right.
So then we're moving into super late models. So 16, I get a super late model, and we're racing out at Irwindale, and then Kern County Raceway's built, and we're racing there competitively, and that's for national NASCAR points. And in my first year, ended up second in points and Rookie of the Year in that, and it was me, Pops, and one other guy.
And this super lates, and it's not like you're going against two other people.
No.
There's a few people out there.
No. And there's a few legends out there.
Are you running, is this like the Southwest Tour stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, on par with that.
Right.
I'd say. We didn't. It was a little bit less of a budget. The Southwest Tour now has kind of gotten astronomical, but
Oh, really?
at the time we could take our car and compete in a Southwest Tour.
Well, the
race.
Southwest Tour now is damn near ARCA, isn't it? The
It's-
car?
No, it's still a super late model.
I'm sorry, the level.
As far as
I mean, I know the car itself is like is it like it's not even called the Hooters series anymore.
It's similar. Yeah,
Yeah,
ASC
but it's like
series.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar to the ASC Hooters Cup.
Right.
Um,
I don't pay attention. I do some research.
It's similar. A lot of that constantly changes the circle
Okay.
track industry. So it's literally the step before you get in what used to be K&N,
Right.
which is
Gotcha.
now ARCA.
Yeah, now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
17 years ago or whatever.
from the legend to the truck, was there a big jump that you had to deal with as a driver?
No, the truck was way easier driving a legend car.
Really?
Anybody that's ever driven a legend car on BF Goodrich's will tell you it's the hardest race
Fair
car
enough.
to drive.
Yeah.
That's why I skip over it in iRacing. It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
definitely
How about the
difficult.
speed truck to the late model? A chunk in power upgrade, right?
You know, power was different. So the truck had I think it was just sub 400 horsepower because it was an insurance thing for a 14-year-old. That's why you could do it. It's a horsepower rating. And then the super late was 600 horsepower. So that was a big jump, the power stuff. But I've always been okay with big power because I raced 125cc stock Hondas at 11, right?
Yeah.
So like I was used
the
to
sense of speed was fine,
the whole nine. Now granted, the weight, and the biggest thing was the width of the race car was another 7 or 8 inches wider, which doesn't sound like a lot,
but when you're going right up next to the wall,
but when you got to get the thing, an inch or two away from the fence, it is a lot.
Did you pancake a couple?
Actually no, I've only wiped out one nose.
Oh,
and on my super late, we've never hung a new body on it.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, he's also now never going to do it again because he just jinxed himself.
Yeah.
No, it sits on the lift at my dad's shop and it hasn't moved in 5 years. So it's there. It stays there.
Nice.
So you get in a late model here, and again, we're on that fast track. We're rolling through, and as you say, did pretty good. Was the thought process we're going to do pretty good in that, and opportunities should come knocking, or what was the plan after late models?
That was the idea. So the unfortunate thing, and where I really screwed up in my career, this is when social media really started coming out. So a lot of people weren't in racing at the time, right?
And let's do a reset on the year. What yearish are we at? We've been talking about age, but
this is like 2012 or no, sorry, 2011, 2012 ish.
And this is when you are held.
I'm 16-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, 16.
Okay.
No, 16 to 18 is when I raced the late model.
Right. So 16, you're 2011.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So in 2011, this is about that time frame. So, Facebook's becoming a thing.
Right.
People are starting to market themselves. Companies are starting to use marketing on Facebook. I was behind. I was way, way, way behind on social media at the time. Honestly, because I was 10 hours a day in the shop trying to prep the car.
Were you social as a kid?
Yeah, fairly. I mean, I wasn't most
outside of school. At the track, I'm sure you had your friends and stuff. At school, were you going to parties and that kind of stuff? Or
so that's a yes.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I actually, as a kid, I was not, but something clicked sophomore year of high school. It was probably women, that I just became a social butterfly. I had, 7 different groups of friends, and honestly, it didn't help. It didn't hurt that I was a race car driver, right? And people knew that, that's the guy that races cars. So it was kind of cool. But, I had a lot of friends, and again, I still actually had a dirt bike, so I'd go ride and stuff with my friends, and
Gotcha.
That was the thing at my high school, was the guys that rode were the popular kids. It wasn't the football team. It was the kids that rode dirt bikes.
Wow.
Gotcha.
So
interesting school.
Yeah, it's different. But so I became pretty social, and I had a good time in high school, and definitely went to some parties and had a good time.
But the online social game, for you, it just wasn't a focus.
It wasn't really a thing being talked about, really. Like
yeah, and actually, when I moved down here in 11, and I know my wife had Facebook, but I only got the Facebook to network the people that I was leaving.
Right.
Like all these people in the Northwest that I was never gonna see again, right? But I'm not gonna see regularly.
Right.
I'll jump on the Facebook and whatnot so we can stay connected.
It was totally different. Yeah.
It had only fairly recently gone away from, I think it was all a part of schools originally.
It was college.
Or was that
college, I believe?
Yeah, something like that.
It's college
Yeah,
students. It's for college students to network.
Right. And then obviously it's blown up since then.
Of course.
So it's not like it's out to lunch at that point. You may not have been on the cutting edge, but certainly working on the car is going to go a little bit because there was MySpace, I suppose, but the whole social media boom, and as far as how that is concerned with a driver trying to move his way up, probably not in 11, but by 13, it should have been part of the game.
Right. It should have been. That's the keyword, should have been.
Right.
So you're thinking that's the linchpin in the stall?
Absolutely. It was a huge part of it because, getting to market to, big company owners or whatever, we really never sought out sponsorship much either. I mean, we tried. We had some local companies that helped us out a lot.
Are we basically Liberante Construction? The whole, whatever your dad's
it was
company
Pro
is?
Racing Specialties was his company
Yeah.
for the racing side of it. So, it was just us. And again, we had some local sponsors that threw a couple grand here and there, but we didn't seek big sponsorship or even
Right.
alliances. That was the biggest problem. We didn't align ourselves with anybody. So, I didn't call Coca-Cola and ask for 1 case of Coke a year for 5 years and then
To
go,
throw
look,
Coca-Cola
I'm
on
a
the side."
champion,
Right,
give me $1 million, please.
Yeah.
So,
That's kind of like what we just recorded with Rob Niles. We just released the
Released
Rob
it,
Niles episode. The owner of CalSpeed, and he said when he was a kid, when they were younger, in racing, they did a lot of enduro karts and stuff like that. He goes, we were fiercely independent to a fault.
yep.
They would do it in house by themselves, and you do things wrong in that way. When you look back on those scenarios, and you're doing pretty damn well, but maybe you could have done more. You kind of alluded to like that's the thing in my career that I did wrong, if you will.
Yep.
Was there a turning point in your 18? You're running late models here, where you're going, shit. Now what do I do? Because I'm not the ladder stopped. I can't get to the next rung on that deal.
Yeah, so the way this story kind of unfolds, I actually ended up getting a manager who was managing myself, seeking sponsorship, things like that. And we ended up finding an investor that was going to invest in me for 5 years at $10 million a year. And I was basically going to sign 10% of my life over to her, which I was cool with. And
Sounds like a decent deal for those of us who aren't playing the game. Yeah.
yeah, no, it was a pretty smoking deal. It was great. I thought the best time of my life. So I never really got the full details on why it never worked out. It had something to do with bonds because she was like royalty in another country and they had bonds for the United States.
I get those emails all the time, bro.
Right. Yeah. No, this was real. This was legit. Like she came to my races and stuff like that and started funding some of it and stuff. So it was an investor. And something happened with her business after I got to test and get in some ARCA stuff, some Camping World Truck stuff. I just remember I was packing my bags and moved to Mooresville at this time I'm 19 years old, still racing the super late model. The whole investment thing went out and it was real, and we signed a contract with the truck team, and I was moving to North Carolina, packing my bags, waiting, for the next month to leave and get ready for Daytona for the first race of the year, and got the call that it was done. So
What year?
Wow.
this was, I was 19 years old. They all blend together now.
It's 2013, I think.
Yeah, it was like 13 or 14.
Yeah.
So 13, 14, we're supposed to be going for the
We're going Camping World Truck Racing.
right.
Man.
Deal was signed. The money just wasn't in the account and never got there.
Gotcha.
So we had it all worked out, and that was the ultimate. Because at the time, like again, I didn't realize the social media thing because I found something, right? I thought I found my future, at least my for the time being. And then when we hired a marketing agent, we hired all the people we needed to hire to get me higher up than that and let my results kind of do what it would do. That was the game plan at that point. Well, I didn't learn those game plans until this was years, a year and a half or two of negotiations and budgeting and interviewing people. And like, this was a real thing happening. And when the plug got pulled on me, it was like, I don't ever want to see a racetrack again.
The wind just got taken out of your sails.
Oh,
yeah.
It was the most depressing time in my life. Absolutely. It was right there. It's at my fingertips and it's gone like that. Poof.
Yeah.
Gone. So, hard time for me. I got out of racing completely for 2 or 3 years. And, only reason I really got back into it is because I started working at the track for a good friend of mine, Michael Leib. I was his mechanic after that, and I would not touch a go-kart. I still, to this day, won't watch a NASCAR race because of it. It's
Wow.
one of those deals. So, which is what it is. But
Yeah.
Going back to before you get back into, when you do it as a tuner first,
Right.
As a wrench. Did you? You've been basically, if for lack of a better way of putting it, you've been rolling with your dad financially. We haven't talked about a job or anything like that. You working for him? Is Race Liberante doing anything to support himself? Because this happens at 19.
Yeah.
So technically, and I'm not sure if you've moved out or anything like that, but so it's not happening, and now you have no anything. So okay, I'm out of racing. Well, you're not out of life,
right, correct.
So
yeah, I
what
can't just hit
happens?
pause, right?
Yeah.
So actually, I've lived on my own since I was 16. Me and
wow.
So yeah, I'll back up a little bit. Me and my pops didn't quite get along our whole lives together.
It was the late model racing is what did it.
It honestly was, and it got to a point where we still loved racing and racing together. That's the only time we got along was at the racetrack.
Oh, wow.
It got to a point where he would work on the car during the day. when he was not working at his actual job. And after school, he would leave and go either work on a job site or whatever, and I would work on the car by myself. We couldn't be in the same room together outside of the racetrack.
If you don't mind me asking, how does that happen, bud?
I mean, so we talked about the partying thing and, you know, being the high school, getting into high school and getting into girls and like the whole teenager phase. I went through it. I loved it. You know, I thrived. When
Your
I
focus
16,
was elsewhere at
17.
times.
So you were a
Sometimes.
pain in the ass.
I could have been. Yeah, I definitely was. You know, listen,
More than now?
no. No. In my opinion, I got my shit done, but I also knew, you know, I was, and don't, I really hope kids aren't listening to this, but.
Nobody listens to this podcast.
Great.
Anyway, but.
Perfect. I wasn't going to say that, but I knew at 16 I was borderline untouchable. At 16, you really can't get in trouble. In reality, you really can't when you look at a nutshell. I knew that. I was one of the only 16-year-olds that knew that. Granted, I wasn't a terrible kid. I wasn't in jail or anything, or doing any crazy drugs or something like that. But I was out having a good time, and I knew I can get away with having a good time. Me and my friends built welded tricycles together out of Barbie Jeeps, and we're sliding them down the hills and stuff, hillsides, and that was our fun, right? We were just doing dumb stuff, and having a good time. So he didn't like that. He didn't love that, right? So we had our differences.
Especially with the amount of money and effort going into the racing stuff. Maybe you're not taking it as serious as you could.
For sure.
And, or you're going to effing blow this by being
I could have gotten hurt or something.
Right.
Yeah. So, at the time, as a 16-year-old, if you would ask me then, I'd been like, yeah, my dad's whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but looking back on it now, absolutely, I took a little bit of it for granted, for sure. I could have been a little more serious, but at the end of the day, we were winning races. So I felt like I was like the, if you were to compare Travis Pastrana and Brian Deegan when they were going at it together during FSX stuff, Travis Pastrana put the hours in, Brian Deegan screwed off. Still did the good job. I was more or less having a good time on the side and knowing when I got in the seat, it was game time.
But it was straining the relationship with you and your pops.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So I strained that relationship pretty hard, and it got to a point where it was time for us to just not be together 24/7, which was okay. We separated a little bit. I ended up, my mom was, my parents were divorced at a young age. So my mom was moving in with her new fiance at the time, and she had her apartment left and had 6 months left on the lease. And I said, hey, I'll take that. I'll just pay you cash. So.
And how are you doing that?
I had a full-time job. So I was on independent study. So our thing with racing, I had to go on independent study through school. So I went 2 days a week.
But you were all for anyway. You would want to be there in the first place.
Actually, I loved high school. Loved it.
Really?
Let me rephrase. You didn't want to be in the classroom.
Correct.
Yes.
You like the social part of it.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved
Hence
it.
the straining relationship before.
Correct.
But so you end up, you now have the ability to have a job.
Yep.
Because you're not tied down with the 9 to 5, if you will, of school.
Yep.
Regardless of whether that's a good or bad decision
bad
in the long
decision.
run. Yeah,
Don't do
right?
it, kids.
Right. So without getting into that, though, what are we doing? It sounds like we're not working for Dad.
No. So we're working at Willow Springs Raceway.
Okay.
That shop that you see out of Turn 9 at Willow Springs, that big shop.
Yeah.
I worked there. I coached drivers in their race cars on the big track and managed the...
At 16?
16 and a half.
And you're teaching the guys over there?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd never been on the big track. I was literally the whole like fake it till you make it thing in full effect.
Wow.
Full effect. I was, guys would come into the shop. Hey, you guys have any driver instructors? I'm trying to get around the big track better. At the time, I was doing really good in cars and go-karts. So
But this kid comes walking out.
I'm like, hey, I can help you. So I'd start instructing people.
And if I can't, my ego sure damn will.
Absolutely. We're gonna wing it. That's what we're gonna do. So I started instructing people and getting to drive some really badass race cars. My first race car outside of circle track racing and the stuff we talked about earlier when I was testing was a GT2 Viper ACRX.
Get out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of karma, man.
It was a lot of car. It was a scary car to drive, actually. But that was the first car I got in around Big Willow. And from there, the guy, a couple other guys with Porsches or whatever would come up, and I'd coach them.
Word got around, yeah.
Yep, and they'd buy go-karts, and I'd coach them in that. And so I worked there as an instructor.
Was it ever a surprise, or did you ever kind of get, snickered at when these guys would come up with their cars and out comes this teenager looking to coach them?
Were they surprised?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Did you ever get
couple
kind
guys, yeah,
of not taken seriously, that
yeah,
sort of thing?
Absolutely. I've always done...
That was kind of my thing. Is like, you're 16 and he's not. Like
Right.
he's got to be 30, 40.
40s usually.
You
Yeah,
know?
was an average guy.
and you're gonna teach me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Kid
Well,
can
I've
barely
always-
get his permit.
I've always been confident, right? So
Right,
like,
yeah.
when I talk to these guys, like, hey, can you show me around on that thing? Absolutely, I can show you.
Yeah,
around
but
in
I'm
that car.
imagining a Race Liberante with the earring in the ear.
I had
and,
2 earrings.
Like
One earring is not right. I had 2. Yes,
know, it's-
I was a punk.
Yeah,
Imagine a
you
punk
know?
16-year-old walking around with his hat on backwards, going, "Yep, I can show you how to drive that race car."
you know?
Right.
But then actually backing her up a little bit. So your day job basically is you're working at Willow. You're making some money. You're on your own in the apartment for that 6 months or whatever. I assume that's the gig and that's what you do for a while to provide for yourself. Then this thing happens at 19. Did you do that deal at Willow from 16 through that whole thing, or did you end up getting a other maybe better paying job?
So actually, yeah, I did the go-kart stuff and the coaching in the race cars for quite a while, and I was making really, really good money actually. So and I was having a blast. I loved work. And after that, it was owned by my uncle, so I was working for my uncle at the time.
Okay.
And
The ASA speed truck guy.
different uncle.
Oh, okay.
Different uncle, yep. And so I was working for him, and it got to a point where it was kind of becoming a weird like family conflict. At one point, if we disagreed on something, it came to the Thanksgiving table. So
Right.
Perfect
At
time
it-
to talk about it.
right, yeah, exactly. Not on my cue.
Yeah.
I was a 17-year-old. I didn't give a crap. you know?
Yeah.
And
Also, low man on the totem pole, for being honest.
exactly. I was
Right.
not the highest up. And honestly, I'll be 100% honest with you guys. I'm a terrible employee. I'm a very bad employee because if I see somebody making $1 on and I'm making a nickel on it, it's not cool to me. And that's just how I've been wired from a young age. You know, I think I've always felt like I could run my own business or be my own boss and make my own money kind of thing. So that was kind of weird for me.
It's
you know.
kind of like what Andy had mentioned about his own. He's like, I know that I need to. He's
He
like,
can't be an employee.
yeah, he needs to be his own boss.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I knew that from a young age. You know, after having 2 or 3 jobs, I was like, it just doesn't make sense. Why would I not just pay the $500 and start the LLC myself? You know?
Right.
So in my head, I'm like, I can do all that and make that much more.
Well, and I mean, from early on, like since cadets, right? Your dad had started this business savviness in you one way or another, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and we've always been independent more than anything. Like
sure.
I had to be independent. Like again, 16 years old, I'm living on my own. I was forced to grow up very quick because now I had bills to pay, and there was again another commitment I had to have with my mom. I had to have the talk with her, like, look, this is how I'm going to pay the bills. I promise you, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I will pay my rent on time, and I'll pay for this. And I knew how much I had to make. And so at that time, like, my dad did a really good job raising me and getting me in reality, really, at the end
he
of
got
the
you
day.
prepared for stuff.
Yeah. And then when it was time for me to go on my own at a younger age than most, I felt like I could put it all together with the experience I've already had and the things I've already kind of learned. So at that point, yeah, I did that for a few years, and actually, I owned my first business at 18. It was a hookah lounge. Yeah, it's funny. People are like, "What? Are you serious?" But it was a really big thing.
You know, for a few years,
While we were in high school,
it was yeah.
it was huge.
Yeah.
Like, and it was, we weren't doing it in high school, but like right
Because you
after
couldn't go
high
to a
school-
bar, so you'd go to do that,
Right.
You know,
And it was a big, big thing because all like the troops that were in Iraq and stuff, that's a huge thing out there.
Right.
And Lebanon and whatnot. So they were bringing hookahs back, and there was like a culture thing that was kind of moving as a wave. It was really strange. It was before vaping.
No,
so like,
actually, I lived. So when I moved down here in 2011, I lived with Brad Packard
Right.
and Hallie for 3 months until Becky could move down as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally remember hookah being a thing. So that's 2011. I'm talking about.
yeah, that's
literally the time.
yeah. It was
So-
big. I don't
Yeah,
know
it was huge.
why.
It was 11 to like 17 was like its era.
I remember one night one of our friends got it, and she's like, "Hey, I got a hookah. We got to go do it somewhere." And like we're all packed in
Somewhere.
her
It sounds like
old
drugs.
Yeah, we're all packed in her old like 2000 Lexus sedan, and this hookah's coming out the freaking sunroof, and we're parked
my
on some
God.
street, just all like just hanging out smoking hookah.
If only you'd known about Race Liberante.
Yeah, I would have so
Racy hookah
support-
or
It was
whatever.
called XOXO Hookah Lounge.
Oh,
man.
that's very high schoolish of you.
yes.
doubled as a speed dating.
Yes. I got a
Place in
job there because at the time I was into something like that. So it was a night job. It was a second job. And it was literally down the street from my house, and we partied hard at this
Oh,
place.
really?
Hard. And
All different flavors of hookah.
yeah,
Nothing was
and-
off limits.
Yeah, and there was a liquor store right next door, so it didn't help. But
They didn't do any of that. They were only 18.
Yeah.
yeah, we were only 18, so we didn't do anything but hang out. And
Yeah.
Play video games.
yeah, we had
Anyways.
a really good time. I own the business. I can do what I want.
Yeah.
But I started out as an employee there, and I eventually saved up a bunch of money, and ended up buying into it. So
Were you doing the coaching and that at the same
yeah.
time?
So the mornings.
So you're part owner of this thing. You didn't start it from scratch.
No.
You ended up becoming
Yeah,
part owner.
I got a
Okay.
night job there because so really like the hours it was really busy was like 8 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Right.
So I worked from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then I would get up at 6:30 and go to my normal job.
Right.
So I was hustling like at a young age. What I felt like was hustling, working as hard as I could, and
So roughly like 18 years old, this is all like you
it's
got
right when I turned 18.
Yeah, you got good money coming your way and all that kind of stuff. At one point in your karting career, did you feel like you were being, or the car career too, you felt like you're being more involved with the money part? Because obviously that helped you all out with this
But
kind
you-
of these kind
to
of decisions.
Out of that, you said that your dad and you were still doing the car thing. So it's not like you had to support the car thing financially.
No, I did not. I did not have to support the cars financially. Now, we did rely on, so the big difference from karting to car racing is you get a paycheck at the end of the night, whether you start the race or you finish first. So we relied on the winnings a lot. Like some races, there was a few races where we literally weren't putting gas in the tank to get home without that check that night.
Wow.
So we knew what races paid cash the night of the race, and we knew we had to win those races sometimes to get home. So
How was that pressure for you?
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
I don't do, I don't do well under pressure like that. Financial pressure, pressure on a racetrack, I can handle okay, I think.
With points and that kind of stuff doesn't really bug you.
No. Yeah, points and stuff never really bothered me much. Of course it stresses everybody out, but it's not like the end of my world.
Right.
But yeah, the financial stress for us was
Food on the table status.
Ye-
That's where it gets a little hectic.
it gets a little tricky there. Yeah, absolutely. And at the time, again, I didn't live with my dad, so I didn't understand. Maybe I didn't see the food on the table stuff.
Because
But
you had your 9 to 5, if you will, and you
I
had,
was feeding myself. I was
Right.
paying, doing my car thing, like whatever. I was doing my own thing at that point. And now I'm an adult, right? I'm 18. So,
but
yeah, I
on the
did-
racing side of things.
well, we couldn't afford an extra set of tires.
Yeah.
We couldn't afford, to practice on Friday night sometimes.
And to your point about we can't afford to bring to put food in the gas in the tank. You're not talking about like your dad's still rolling with his own company and stuff like that, right? He's not putting himself in financial hardship for the racing, right?
This is, so if you remember correctly, right, this is after kind of like our version of
Right.
Falling out.
Right.
the Great Depression kind of thing, right? In 2008, 2009, when
gotcha.
the economy fell,
okay.
construction went to crap.
Okay, so he was having a bit of a time, and to try to keep you racing at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
And kudos to him. He never let that really hit home with me, the financial stress he was under. Again, I was in high school. We had some other things going on in our lives with family and stuff like that, grandmothers, grandfathers, and stuff like that, passing and whatnot. So
Sure.
my mother had cancer during the time and stuff. So that was a huge, really tough time in our lives, financially and emotionally.
Shit, man, everything at once.
Yeah, it was
Jeez.
yeah, my like teenage years were actually honestly kind of tough, but honestly I'm not happy it all happened the way it happened.
Well,
but
you are who you are.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's fine, but everybody's got a story at some point in their life, right? Mine just happened to be a little earlier than some.
And you turning 19 and having this punch in the gut of that whole thing crumbling down, the weight behind that has a little more context at this point now.
Absolutely, because
You guys went all in.
all in, mortgage the house, the whole nine.
And
Yeah.
if and when this says, sorry mate,
Yeah.
you're done.
Yeah, it took a different toll.
You're like,
sure.
well, shit.
It's one thing if, and I don't mean this to offend anybody, but if daddy was paying all the bills and comfortable with paying all the bills and one day it just, I'm not good enough. Oh, well, let's go play golf for the rest of our lives or whatever, right?
Right.
That's one thing. But when you sank your blood, sweat, tears, time, emotions,
Everyone's
everything,
invested.
My whole family was invested in it. I mean, we all sacrificed so I could go racing. And when that kind of dropped, it was like you just said, it was the weight off of, it wasn't weight, it was weight dumped on me that was like, man, we just spent 16 years trying to do this or 15 years trying to do this, and now it's crumbling right here, right now. So it was a rough time in my life for sure. And it made me reevaluate a lot of things. I quit racing. I kept on the business. That eventually went kind of under when.
Sorry, you quit racing. Your dad was kind of supporting. So is he out?
So at the time,
everything's like.
The conversation
stop.
was, listen, son, like, we're done. Like, I did what I could do. That's the end. You're 19 years old now. It's over, you know? And at the end of the day, really, you know, some people don't want to see it that way, but now they're taking race car drivers at such a young age, and you're not necessarily done. I mean, you can, if you can dream something, I'm sure anybody can achieve it, but it was time to go. Unfortunately, it made me reevaluate what life really was and where my life was really going to go. So again, now I had, you know, I was paying my bills through racing / the business I had. That was kind of coming to an end because other industries were taking that whole part of the business over. And that was a very short time in my life. So I don't really get into it much about the lounge stuff, but, on the racing side of it, which is again, more or less the passion side of, you know, everybody says do something that you love. It never feels like work. I really always kind of held to that, and racing has always kind of been that for me. But when that happened, it was like, racing doesn't love me.
Yeah.
And so it made me step back, and I got real jobs. You know, I started working in restoring classic cars. I got to do some of that.
To that point, you weren't forced out of racing. You chose to get out of it because what used to be the passion that you love to do, now, like you said, you don't watch a NASCAR race anymore. I mean, it stung.
Yeah, no, it hurt.
Going to the racetrack and doing those things. So you go hard stop at 19. You had the conversation with your pops. Hey, we're not doing this anymore. It's game over. And you'd said it. We spent 15 some odd years trying to become a race car driver, and we just got the finger. Mm-hmm. Shit. No college stuff, none of that stuff. So I need to go.
No plan B.
I need to figure out.
I was going to
life.
ask. Actually, yeah. Did you think about going back to school any of that?
Nope.
No.
Nope. Because at the end of the day, honestly, again, backing up a little bit when I said, you know, I was a bad employee per se. I didn't want to be an engineer. I didn't want to work for somebody. I was going to be good in sales or owning my own business. And that's kind of where I always kind of mentally was. So I went on to get real jobs. I worked for actually Brendan Baker's father, who's an old kart racer, doing construction, laying asphalt and digging trenches and stuff. And I actually enjoyed that. I had some fun, but it was back-breaking work. I knew I'd be dead by the time I turned 35, kind of like he is. But so I didn't really love doing that on the long run. It was a fun job to have for a year. I got into sales on the construction side of things and did very well for myself, and just didn't fall in love with it. And everything, it's kind of like, you know, I'm really big on signs in life, and everything kept leading back. Like there'd be something, somebody would call me to come mechanic for them at LAKC, or, you know, I managed the D-Power team after Kyle Kunze left when it was Art Grand Prix and transitioning into Mad Croc, really. So I still did racing stuff on the side. I was at the track, but I wouldn't physically sit in the seat. You know, there's something about that was just like, this isn't.
Keep your distance.
Kind of, yeah. Like I didn't get emotionally invested in karting or racing in general after all that for about 2 or 3 years. I would still come to the track and work, but it was work.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
right.
Like the mentality was different. I wasn't there enjoying
I'm here
myself.
for a paycheck.
Exactly.
That's when I remember first seeing you out here. Really was with the Mad Croc deal.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Previous to that, I worked for Art Grand Prix, which was D-Power, Daniel and Naf Patino.
Yeah.
Kyle Kunze was the team manager, who's like an older brother to me. He's known me since I was 2 weeks old. So I was kind of one under him. He taught me a lot. Growing up, he was a huge mentor of mine through those years. And when he left to move on in his career in life with Molecule and whatnot that he's got now, I took over team manager role at D-Power. So I was still invested, right? Like I was still into racing. I still loved it. Like there was no, you know, I will always love racing. And I knew that after all that kind of failed, I guess, my racing career, I still wanted to be there. I still wanted to be a part of it. I just wasn't ready to put myself committed back into it or get emotionally invested back in karting.
Speaking of the emotional thing, I wanted to ask you, so that whole thing goes down, and it's like I said, it's hard stop at 2019. At 19. Do things get better with your dad at all at this point?
Yeah, I mean we're on.
Because hey, shit, man.
Yeah, no, so him and I, like, it was just a couple of years of me being a punk teenager, right?
Yeah.
And not realizing it per se. I like to party and have a good time, and I still got my job done. Like, I was proud that I still came
You're
to
justified
work.
to us, buddy. We got it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for people listening, like, oh, yeah, you kicked that away, right? No, I might have, but I can't go back and change now. I had a good time, though. After that, him and I definitely patched things up. I mean, again, it was just a small rough patch and things that had to happen. So I didn't really, I don't blame him for anything or
because I'll tell you, I mean, you guys look pretty tight.
Yeah,
no, yeah,
I mean,
for
here at
sure.
the track and
yeah.
whatnot.
The problem is we're the same person, right? So
Yeah.
that hurts once in a while. No, we're close. At the end of the day, he loves me and I love him. And I think every family goes through a rough patch. And if you don't, then I don't know how real your family unit really is. But
you certainly learned a bunch in that short period of time that you had to get after it.
Absolutely. And I'm actually extremely thankful that because people, even today with my business I have now, I've owned 2 different businesses before this one. This is my first rodeo necessarily. And people judge me because I'm 26 and I manufacture go-karts. I'm not 32 like some other guys out there, or 40 or 50 or 60 that have been doing it forever. I'm young and I'm probably the youngest one doing it, and that's okay. But I definitely get judged for it.
Yeah.
So it's okay. But, everything, the stopwatch doesn't lie. So that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not very fast.
Wow. That sucks. Sometimes. You're right.
Yeah, so actually, when I remember first meeting you was when you were working for Mad Croc. Or I guess it would be the Daniel. Was it still Daniel's team at the time when you had the...
Yeah, D-Power.
Was it D-Power? Okay, so we don't really have to get into the transition and whatnot, but... you said that you'd basically kind of stayed in the karting game by working. And so, like you said, you kind of took over as the management deal of Matt Croc. That's when I remember meeting you, but you'd stayed out of the seat.
Yeah, I stopped driving. I would, I'd like to practice. Like, I had a go-kart at home, and I'd do 1 pro kart race a year at Willow Springs, and I would do streets of Lancaster, and I would just keep it fun and local, and that was it. But I still love racing. Like, at the end of the day, I've always loved racing. I will always love racing. Yeah, it pissed me off at that point, and I was mad at racing. But at the same time, like, it's like that crazy ex-girlfriend you just can't get over, right? Like, I had to keep calling it back. So I came to the kart track, and I enjoyed, I've always really loved helping the younger drivers out. And I got a great opportunity to work with Stingray Rob when I first started managing the team, who's now in Indy Lights and doing an amazing job for himself. As well as Mateus Podboy and Billy Musgrave. And so I had some great opportunities working with people. And again, talking earlier, I fell in love with the technical side of it too. I really, really, really enjoyed it. So working with Kyle growing up, I got to learn a lot more about kart setup and geometry and tubing and design and things like that.
Was there a development aspect with that group?
There was.
Okay.
So later in my years with them, so it kind of took a weird turn. The Mad Croc thing was always kind of an odd... I almost think it was like... had bad luck on it the whole time. It was like not meant to ever work across the world, not necessarily what we did here in the States, but it transitioned from Art Grand Prix to Mad Croc, and that's when I took kind of over the management role. And then when D-Power decided to get out of karting, it was vacant for a few years, and then all of a sudden Todd Ullman pulls it back up, which we all know from Facebook who Todd Ullman is. He brings it back up, and he hires John Franco Cassidy and Mateus Podboy. Well, both of them were with us before, so they were drivers that I had worked with already, and they said, hey, if you want a guy that can tune a Mad Croc, this is the guy. He was the manager. So again, I was already kind of a step back from...
What year is that roughly?
The karting thing. This has got to be, I want to say 16 at this point.
Okay.
So I start really managing the Mad Croc program and really running the program because Todd doesn't come from karting. His knowledge isn't from karting. So he trusted in me to really go through everything. And I was working side by side with Armando Fellini, who was the designer and owner of Croc Promotion at the time. He's worked with CRG, Maranello, many, many manufacturers in the past. So we're working hand in hand together. We're exchanging emails daily, talking to the factories and things like that. Getting things dialed in for Mateus and as well as Billy Musgrave when he was running tag for us. So I got to work with both those drivers. I got to do a lot of R&D with them. Then I started hopping back in the seat and testing with them just to feel the go-kart out. If we made a change, I wanted to know what it was going to do because, again, I have the data from many, many years ago when I was a kid developing karts. Again, my dad kept all the notes. I kept all the notes. So we knew what we were getting, and then based on Billy and Matthias's feedback, we'd make changes, blah, 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 log all that data and whatnot. So we were doing a lot of development when Todd took it over because he wanted to make the best kart for America.
And when you said you were still racing like Lancaster Grand Prix and Willow Pro Kart, what are you driving?
At the time, so it changed.
I'm sorry, not
year.
just the package, but the class.
Shifter.
As well. Shifter? Okay.
Yeah, primarily
Okay.
shifter. So that was like, when I got into seniors, we focused a lot, most of our efforts on shifter, especially when I was racing cars, because it was the closest thing. We're shifting the whole nine, right? Front brakes, blah, 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 blah. So I kind of gave the Rotax stuff up. We sold all the 100cc and Rotax stuff. I never had an interest in tag racing. I thought it was ridiculous. So I liked shifter karting. So that's what we raced when I did race it. Stock Honda was huge.
Right.
We always had our one good engine and just sat on the shelf, and it got used every year.
Right.
Once a year.
Don't touch it. Yeah.
That's it. So had a lot of fun doing that. And then actually really when I started driving again, oddly enough, and people don't think this has done anything for sport, but I'm the first one to tell you it has, was 206. When the 206 was introduced and Tri-C and LAKC picked it up, we took the old 2006 KRT off the shelf and went and ran it for fun on a weekend. And
That was a good kick in the ass for the industry.
yeah, no, it was good. It was
And that's the
definitely
first
a
time
boost.
that I got a chance to, or we got a chance to run with you on track as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and we got to run with some good drivers
Oh,
too,
dude.
some legends.
Yeah,
17 was a stout year, man.
And it started the ass end of 16.
yeah.
The ass end of 16, I want to say we were on the track at the same time.
End of 16.
Dude,
yep.
even Fred got out there. Fred got out there one
Yep,
race,
yeah,
I think.
And Seth Nash.
Yeah.
all those guys. Yeah,
It
we
was
had
a
a good
blast.
time. For
That
sure.
was a good time.
So you were already doing the shifter game, and then the development and whatnot starts to happen with these other guys. So you're able to bring information to it. And then obviously, and then in 17, you start driving a little bit more for fun and whatnot. I don't remember you didn't do a full season. But whenever you were here, you were in the game, as you say, pulling off the 2006 KRT.
Yeah.
And it went from that to a Mad Croc, right?
No, so I went from the KRT, started in the KRT, because that was the idea of the class. Bring whatever you got, strap the motor on,
Right.
and go race.
Yeah.
And that's what we all
Which was
kind of did.
legit. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, RLV came out, the VLR car, so they were really honing in on the 206 stuff, and that's what you guys were on, and
Right.
kicking butt, and it was kind of hard for us all to keep up, so I then went back to CRG,
That's
started
right.
developing their four-cycle chassis, and this will come in later in this podcast, but never saw eye to eye with them on that. They didn't want to make the changes we wanted to make, and blah, 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 blah. It just didn't work out. And then, I was still working for Matthias as a mechanic, so I kind of stepped away from the program so much as far as, like, working for... as team manager, head of R&D,
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
because Todd picks up the Mad Croc deal, and they bring you back on because you were part of
Right.
the D-Power deal,
And
not
when that
part
was
of.
vacant, I was doing the CRG thing, developing
Okay.
the kart for them.
Okay.
And then
So it all kind of blends together a little bit.
and then it all comes together when Todd calls me
Right.
and says, "Hey, I want you to take this on."
Gotcha.
So I start managing the team. We got, we had our game, a structured game plan, and a budget aside for what we were gonna do. And I ended up. That's when I designed my first go-kart, and that was the 4-cycle Mad Croc chassis.
At any point, like Todd brings on, you go, by the way, I can drive okay. Or at this point, did you still have no, I'm not interested.
Honestly,
in
I was
driving.
fat at the time.
Actually,
you
were.
I was 218 pounds at
Yeah.
my heaviest at
Wow.
one point. Yeah, and I was in no condition to get my fat ass in a go kart. So, and I tried. I remember when I had to buy a number 3 seat, I was like, man, what are you doing?
I'm stoked to be in a 3.
Right. See, and that's a good comparison. Look at everybody, Mike Smith. That was me.
He's
without
taking a sip of Rolling
without a
Rock
beer.
right now, too.
Yeah, we're cutting that out.
Mind you, I was 23 years old. I shouldn't be that out of shape.
Right,
so,
right.
I'm not fat. I'm big boned.
Yeah, listen, I raced at the time. That's when racing was on my budget. I had a dirt modified, and I was hanging out with a bunch of Okies.
Come on.
Getting it on the top side. So when we got back into karting, I was like,
We got a problem.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So and again, I was very, very interested in the R&D and design side of things. So I really took a toll of that. I really didn't care that I didn't race. Matthias is my best friend, and I loved working with him every weekend. And Billy, obviously, we all know Billy's a very talented driver. So I loved working with Billy a lot, and
It's cool
you know,
seeing actually Matthias help you out. When I knew he was doing when you're on the Compkart, he was working with you too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of going to flip the other way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I don't want to
yeah.
I thought that
go
was
too
neat.
far on that, but yeah, I agree. It's interesting how it went back and forth. So you end up going from, managing the other deal to being a part of this thing, developing stuff. When does it start to flip to you get back in the seat in earnest?
So I started, so when I got back in the seat is again after I designed the first kart I designed, which was the 4-cycle
four-stroke,
kart
right, for CRG.
And-
Or
no, for Mad Croc.
Right.
Didn't you draw that out in like a napkin or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we were at Armando Fellini, which at the time was the owner of Croc Promotion. We were at Sonoma for, I believe it was a Pro Tour race. And we're sitting at dinner, and I go, Armando, we have to make a 4-cycle chassis. This VLR kart is doing very well. It's a 4-cycle specific car. I did some stuff with CRG, blah, blah, give him the whole story we were just talking about. And I go, I think I know what we need to do. I think I know what will win races. So and I start drawing it out with measurements and everything, because I measure every go-kart I've ever driven. And I go, I think this is where we have to be. This is what I kind of want to do. And he goes, okay, I want to change 1 or 2 little things, and I'll make one. It'll be here in 3 weeks. Cool, great. Sure as shit, it's there in 3 weeks. And we put it together, and it is bad fast.
I remember, yeah.
And
It's so fast into the wall at Lancaster on a warm-up lap.
that wasn't my fault. That's Sonny. I'm calling Sonny Cervali out. That's his fault.
Did he
flat
boot
out.
you?
No, he was scrubbing. So you remember the only freaking right-hander at
Okay, yeah,
Lancaster?
yeah.
The only time that 206s were at Lancaster was the
Right.
exhibition race.
That was the craziest race ever. FYI.
I've
yeah,
heard.
it was a lot
Yeah.
of fun, and not only was where we crashing during the race, but tons of fun over here is crashing on the pace lap.
Yeah. So I qualify second. Sonny's on pole. Well, he goes through that right-hander full speed and checks up and starts scrubbing his tires.
Oh, God.
I come up next to him to avoid hitting him, right, when he checks up pretty hard. And he scrubs his tire right into my front tire and shoot me straight in the wall.
And I come around the right-hander because I think this is for the heat race. Yeah.
Yes,
for the
this
heat
is
race.
the first
Mike's
heat
pointing
race.
and laughing at you driving by.
No, I was pretty damn surprised to see a parking lot on the right-hand side.
Yeah. I was pissed. Yeah, Sonny flat out, he apologized after and everything, so it's all good. But yeah, there was 48 Briggs that weekend. It was something stupid.
It was
in the 40s.
Maybe 40.
Maybe, okay.
Maybe
So let's
40. I
say
think it was
40
It was a big
Briggs.
field, though.
It
I'm
was
pretty
solid,
sure
yeah.
it was
Because it was
40.
invitational. In theory, and there was a lot of very good, quote, 206 drivers and people who know more than that, but they had already kind of Sonny's not a 206 driver. You're not a 206 driver. You're a good driver. Just so happens you also drive 206s. And there was other people who were just actually 206 drivers that were, quote, invited because they won a 206 championship. or
Whatever, yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, guys from up north and whatnot.
Exactly. And then there was some people who not as much. And unfortunately, the back half was kind of effing some stuff up. And at the sharp end, Harrison Mills, Sonny Cervelli, John Crow, and myself are in there. You're in there. There's tons of other names I can't remember. But
Matt
there's-
Johnson, I
there-
think, was in it that year.
no, Matty was running.
He was running tag.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He wasn't even 206. Not there. He did it the year after.
You're
Anyway,
right.
but there's some talent. So at the sharp end of the field, we just end up wrecking our asses. We just you end up going out with a busted tie rod or something like that with that frickin'
Oh no. We had
Or
remember we had
bent.
the red
That's
flag.
right. So we had
Oh,
right.
Jesus.
But we end up having this turn before. So the Lancaster, you get this the long straight, which actually goes into the final corner, start finish, and it's a couple of double lefts. Well, in between turns 1 and 2, we all decide to just
pile up.
step on each other and huge pile up. And Crow's right in front of me. He ends up getting these guys. I check up and I am gonna miss Crow, and I get careened from behind. I blast into him and whatnot. Now my thing's bent, and everybody else is like, we're all effed up. It is a freaking parking lot.
There was 15 carts in the barriers.
Jesus.
It was
Stationary.
awesome.
And there was
I
a
hopped
couple.
over 3 of them.
There was
God.
there was a video, and the wreck has been done for a while. And somebody comes in hot, like, "Wow, bam!"
T-bones.
Oh,
14
Jesus.
other
Oh my-
people.
the yellows are flying, mate. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Anyways, it was not the best look for 206 racing at the time.
Doesn't
and
sound
it all
like it.
started with Race Liberante.
No, that wasn't me. No, that was Heat 2. Heat 1, I went in the barriers by myself with Sonny. and we're done.
That's true.
I literally,
And then Heat 2,
this is
comes
no
into the field. Yeah.
BS. I crashed right outside of the smoothie shop that we all got smoothies from that weekend, and I walked into the smoothie shop and got me a smoothie.
That's
and
awesome.
watched the rest of the heat race.
Yeah, which
The second heat race, I start 40th, let's call it a round number of 40. I get collected in this red flag.
Yep.
My tie rods are both bent, and Joe Janowski is the race director at the time. We're on the front stretch for the red flag, and I'm yanking on my go-kart to straighten these tie rods.
I remember that.
And he's like, "What are you doing? Working on it?" I go, "I'm not working on this. Do you see me with any tools here?"
That's awesome.
And he's like, "Well, that's fair, I guess. You don't have tools."
I would have black flagged his ass Sterling
Dude,
Marlin status.
I literally pulled these tie rods almost straight.
Wow.
And went from however many were left. I think there was only like 30 left after the rest of it, up to like 7th in the heat race. But before, I was like 3 seconds off because my toe was an inch out. But that was a fun race. But yeah,
206 racing blast.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And people were like, "Oh, dude, how do you go from a shifter to a 206?" I'm like I told you earlier, I'll race a shopping cart if that's what's competitive right now. You know, it doesn't matter. We're here to race.
The racing was so good that year, man.
We had so much fun.
There were so many people that could win a race each weekend.
We wore out
It
a
was
lot
insane.
of sticker kits.
Yeah.
Yeah, your guys' stickers looked like shit after
Yeah.
about one day.
Yeah.
And we left them on there because we're
why
gonna
We
do
got
it
the
again
budget
next
for
week.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and Matt Johnson had one race where we were trying to wreck each other the whole time. We were in probably 7th or 8th. We were not contenders, but it got to the point where it was like, all right, let's
see who could win between
let's see who
us.
can get this.
Yeah.
So we start sending each other the whole race, and afterwards, his father comes up to us and goes, "Who was that racing with you? That was the best race on the racetrack." I'm like, "That was me." And he's like, "That was so much fun to watch." I'm like, "Yeah, we almost killed each other, but
I
it was
remember
cool."
watching old Mikey Johnson and Matty Johnson wreck each other on a track at 206s.
Oh, God.
Might have been practice too, actually.
Yeah, that 206 stuff was a lot of fun. That was a
lot
good
of fun.
time.
Yeah.
For sure.
Is that kind of what got you driving again?
A little
and
bit.
getting things rolling?
Yeah, a little bit. And again, at the same time, I bought a dirt modified. This was after my dad and I had the conversation. He's like, "Listen, dude, I did it for 20 years. I just can't do it anymore." It's like, okay, cool. Well, the one thing he never let me race was dirt.
And why is that?
He didn't like cleaning anything.
Oh, that's why I
on
didn't
that-
do it when I was a
Fair
kid.
enough.
Yeah. So he
My dad
just
told me when I was like, "Hey, we can do Pat's Acres in the sprint car, or you can go do the dirt stuff," which is the first thing I ever saw.
Right.
At Canby's, like a horse arena. I'm like, I don't want to clean the go kart. All right, sprint racing it is.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
your dad's a smart man.
Yeah,
At least
he
I'd
just,
like to think so.
Just didn't enjoy it, and he didn't think that was the kind of racing we would want to get into. So, and honestly, he's told me I've always wanted to drive a sprint car, wing sprint car, World of Outlaw car, and he always said, he goes, "If you ever get one of those things, you'll kill yourself because you don't know the limit." And so he kept me out of them. So first thing I did is I bought a dirt modified with my own money. When he said, "We're done. If you want to go race, you got to go do it on your own."
This is 17 as well.
This is
When we're doing the 206 thing, you're doing that as well.
yes.
Or,
This is the end of 2017. I buy a car.
okay.
No. Beginning of 17, actually.
Yeah, because 18. you did do
18 that's when I moved.
Right.
So, beginning of 17, I buy a car. I bought a guy.
Was that like a bucket list thing? Like I really want to try dirt.
Yeah. Well, so from what all my friends that went dirt racing, or the guys I knew that went dirt racing, they all said, you don't have to have the best equipment. If you're a driver, you're a driver. So I'm like, well, I think I'm a driver, right? So I'm like, I got $5,000 in my pocket. I'll go buy a car. And people think like $5,000 for a race car. Yeah, that's a shitty race car. I bought this roller, no engine, no nothing, for $1,400, and it was a rust bucket. And again, like I took a lot of interest in the mechanic side and the fabrication side of cars when I was driving them. So I was already crew chief in late models. Like I worked for. There's a kart team that came and went. It was Position 1 Racing, which was the Martinez family.
Right. We had a Jesus episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Jesus got started with the Martinez family. I think they're family of some sort. But I worked for the Martinez family on their late model program, crew chiefing that for Louis.
Oh,
So-
wow.
What a small world.
Right.
Man.
Yeah, very small world. So like I took a real interest. I was crew chiefing super late models at 18 years old.
Wow.
On the side, and this is all stuff that people never heard or known about because that's just what I did. I just enjoyed it, right? It was
But
my life.
again, at the time, you were all in
That's it.
on the car stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So I knew quite a bit about chassis and structures and this and that. So when I bought my car, I stripped it down, I cut the car in half, and I started rebuilding it, different geometry, different this, different that. So
as a quick question, having not done dirt before, were you getting that kind of knowledge? Were you getting that thought process where I'm going to change things?
I didn't.
Okay.
I guessed.
Oh, really?
You learn in race cars, in NASCAR especially, you learn a lot about the loads of a race car and pulling. They call things pull down rigs, right? That the cars go on in 7-post shakers. I've seen all that stuff. So at this point, I know what is supposed to happen with a car and suspension and loads and this and that
On pavement.
On pavement. And it's similar in dirt. I mean, it's opposite theory, but we had some insight and some friends that were helping us out and get the car together. But I knew geometry-wise what I needed to go fast.
Does your dad get involved?
A little bit. So I did this all at his shop. At
Okay.
least, we have I was fortunate enough to have a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot shop in our backyard with
He's
welders,
like, I kind of like
lathes,
this. The kids
mills.
foot the bill. This is nice.
Yeah, yeah. So he was okay with giving me a spot in the shop,
Right.
and let me use the welder once in a while. But
Yeah, you better buy dinner, though.
Yes,
And the
exactly,
beer.
exactly. So yeah, I got to rebuild my race car in the shop, but it was all on my own, and I wanted it to be that way. I've always been very, independent, and have had my opinions and philosophies on things. And when somebody tries to talk me out of them, I used to get very discouraged and just back out of them. But as I've gotten older, I'm like, no, I really think the math on this really adds up. So I started doing things on my own, and I was racing guys with $50,000, $60,000 race cars and kicking their ass. So it was cool. It was fun. It was cheap, and I had a great time. I loved every part of it. So
Did you
I was
adapt
doing
to the
that.
dirt pretty well?
No, it took me a little bit, for sure. It took me 4 or 5 races to really get it, because in the dirt, too, there's just no practice. There's no such thing. You get 4 laps of hot laps.
That
Wow.
makes sense.
That's it.
They're not going to go and prep the track every time.
No.
Unlike,
Oh,
say,
right.
I'm going to go rent Kern
Yeah.
or whatever.
No,
you
they
know,
have one test day a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because, you would think, like, say here, right? Okay, you can go to Cal Speed anytime. The track might not be great. It's okay. It's not great.
Yeah, it's half a second off.
but it's
whatever.
always
Right.
there.
Yeah, when
not
that thing-
not the way with the dirt track.
No, when
yeah.
the tracks aren't prepped and watered and whatnot,
You
they're
can't even drive.
junk.
Yeah.
It's
That's
not even
true,
worth
yeah.
going. So they would do a prep day once a year at the beginning of the season for everybody to get their stuff together, and that was it. So
Talk about trying to figure it out fast.
Yeah, my first heat race, I finished 3rd, and I was like stoked. I was so happy.
Yeah.
How was the
And,
next heat race?
The main event was next, and I didn't do good.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, who's this kid?
Yeah. Well, actually, so yeah, the guys that announce for the dirt stuff also did asphalt stuff where I was
Oh,
very
cool.
successful. And they're like, oh, this guy's coming from asphalt. I'm like, don't mention me. Like,
Right.
Leave me quiet for like
And then-
6 months.
Yeah, unfortunately, you went and got 3rd out of the gate, so you kind of effed that up, didn't
Right.
you?
I screwed myself, and then I sucked in the main. So it took us about 6 months to really dial the car in. And after that, I haven't won a race yet in dirt. I've only done probably 10 or 11 races. But I got on the podium many times with a car I had no more than $5,000 into.
Well, and let's expand on that, because you talked about it earlier. You moved. I mean, kind of the catalyst to where you're at right now is moving to North Carolina for dirt
modifieds.
racing.
Yep.
So how in the hell do you go from you got a quote shit box that you make your own, seem to do halfway damn decent with it, and now I'm going to go move to North Carolina? And to your point earlier, it was okay, the Hornaday deal. How did that happen? How did it come about that you went from shitbox to Hornaday?
So we finished out the year. We were doing good, and to our credit, in the West Coast, if you want to race on dirt and you want to be the big dog, you go to Bakersfield Speedway. That's
Okay.
where it's at. That's the only place I ever raced.
Oh,
Was
wow.
Bakersfield Speedway. We went to one show one night in Pahrump, Nevada, and we smoked them. And I thought very little of myself in the dirt world because I was getting 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 3rd here and there, 2nd here and there, right? On a lucky night, I would get 2nd. So
But you came from a track where the field was deep.
right, it was
It's-
deep.
That
It
kind
was
of
like,
reminds me of what I've read about or heard about in the Northwest. So if you're in Washington, like where Casey Kane's from, and there's some joints up there that if you can do well,
yeah, there's no joke.
you could probably go damn near anywhere.
Yeah, and that's the West Coast. In the whole West Coast, west of the Mississippi, if you can win at Bakersfield Speedway, you can go win at the IMCA weekly, whatever the SuperNats they call it in Iowa.
Right.
And actually, guys I used to race against have won that race. So I didn't know
We're
that.
talking, did Kevin Harvick ever do the dirt?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he
Because
dabbled
he's a
with
Bakersfield guy, right?
it. Yeah, he's from Bakersfield. He dabbled with it, but he did a lot at Mesa Marin.
Oh, okay.
I do know that for a fact because he's tight with Hornaday. as well as my mini driver Antonino. They grew up together.
Oh, no shit.
Cool.
The dad did, so
Oh,
it was
wow.
kind of sweet. But
Anyway, I'm sorry. Yeah, I cut you off. Yeah. So, anyways, how did you go from shitbox to
so
Hornaday,
I
right?
went out to North Carolina for a friend's wedding, and again, my crew friend, godfather / crew chief at this point, Nick, he was Hornaday's crew chief back in the 90s. And he calls
This is
and
back
says,
when he went and did the Phoenix Steel,
Yes.
the what do they call it? The winter.
This was the
winter
Southwest
heat.
Tour.
And yes,
Yeah.
Southwest Tour, and then he did the winter heat.
Yep. So he was working with him at that point.
Got it.
So and he
How'd you get hooked up with him?
Family friend for a long time. We met him at the racetrack once, and he took a liking to me, and he kind of been in my corner ever since, and
Got
just
it.
became family at
Awesome.
that point. So he hooked me up with Hornaday. He called Hornaday and said, "Hey, he's going to be out there for a wedding. I'd love for you to meet him. You know, he wants to just come see your shop." And that's really all I wanted.
I love
So
it.
I show up to his shop, and I go, "What are you working on?" And him and his driver are there. And he goes, "Oh, we're hanging a body, whatever." I'm like, "Cool, where are the tools?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I'll help you. Like, I'm not here to just stand around, you know."
The wedding's not till 3.
Right. I'm like, the wedding was the next day. And I didn't have to be at my buddies because he didn't get off work till 6. This is
You got time to kill.
2 in the
Yeah.
afternoon. I got 4 hours to work on race cars with Ron Hornaday. I'm going to do it.
That's
Yeah.
the best interview you could have.
Absolutely. So I start picking up wrenches, and we finished whatever they were finishing on the car. And
Awesome.
from there, he goes,
And
"Hey,"
the whole time you're just bullshitting, huh?
Yeah.
You're turning wrenches, you're just talking.
because he's just like, people are like, "Oh my God, Ron Hornaday." He's a normal guy, right?
Yeah.
He's just a racer. He just wants to have a good time, work on his race cars. So, and I'm the same way. So, we start wrenching, and we get to know each other a little bit. We're talking throughout the whole thing. I get to know his driver, and we're all kind of gel pretty well. And he goes, "Hey, come out to the race this weekend. We got our final in Virginia." I'm like, "Cool." So I drive from Nags Head, North Carolina, for the wedding. That night, I leave, and I drive 8 hours up to Virginia to help him for a race. And we ended up winning the race and the championship, and they won their championship and the whole 9.
But
And after that,
you got beat around.
right, I was around it. I helped and whatnot. So after
It
that,
was really the body hanging. That's what did it. Not the rest of the season. It was the body hanging that day.
Yeah.
it
That's
probably
what did
was.
you just touched the side.
Yeah.
It got blessed.
No, he happened to have a good night, right? So afterwards, he goes, "You know, if you ever want to move out here, you know, you've got a job and a place to stay and a ride if you want it."
Wow.
And I go, "Are you serious?" And he goes, "Yeah. You know, you have to work into your ride. I don't give anything away for free, but as long as you're up for it, come on out."
That's awesome.
And that was like kind of maybe the next spark in like, oh, maybe I can do this as a career again, right?
Yeah,
the
because-
connections, the Harvick stories you hear, the Jimmy Johnson story you hear, it's on that couch.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, this is maybe shot number 2.
Yeah, 5 or so years earlier, you got the finger, and now
Right.
you're like, well,
Comes
hold on a
back.
second. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I get home, I pack my bags, and I tell my family I'm out. And after SuperNats that year, I take off and move out there and do our deal. And I didn't unfortunately get to race much because honestly, we sold every car that I'd get a car done, like, sweet, we're going to go race next week. And then some guy would walk in with 40 or 50 grand and buy the car. And that was my deal. We built cars, you race them, you win, we sell them, we build another one.
Right.
That was the deal. That was how we kept it rolling.
Should have lifted. Should have lifted more.
Yeah. Whatever. So, but again, great friendship, huge mentor of mine through my, life. Again, this was the first time away from my family full time, right? Like I just left.
Right.
And it was the best thing I ever did. I think I got to grow as a person a lot more and really see what I was interested in. I was helping him weld chassis and lower control arms and spindles and, learning how to make all these parts and learning more about the geometry and getting to work next to NASCAR crew chiefs and guys that have a lot of knowledge in the sport. And I learned a lot from those guys. So that just transitions. It all still transitions into karting, really. So that's when, after that, then the karting team started and we kind of went from there.
And you end up, like you said earlier, you go from the going from the dirt stuff, being on the couch, going and doing the thing at GoPro, starting a little team, stuff like that. We touched on that earlier, and I don't know that we need to rehash the entire kart team stuff at GoPro. But what makes you decide that you're going to go and I'm gonna make my own chassis? That's
Yeah.
that's what I need to do. I've had a team for about a year or so. I think you said year and a half, right? They're about chassis.
So-
Chassis manufactures the game.
It didn't quite go that fast because I did, I got back into racing in 19, And I got a lot of a massive amount of support from the guys at Compkart, the J3 competition.
How did that come about? Exactly.
So when I met the guys with J3. I got to drive for a good friend of mine named John Bonanno. He runs the master stuff at national level, and we raced each other a little bit in the F series on the East Coast, Marco Oldhofer's series. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, I want you to drive my Rotax kart and tag senior." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't even know if I can make weight," So
Right.
he's like, "No, you'll be fine. Just go rip it, whatever." John Giacomelli will be your mechanic, who's one of the owners at Compkart.
That's pretty cool.
And I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty sweet. Why would I say no to that?"
Right.
So
Even I am fat.
right. So so he's my mechanic that weekend, and we sweep the weekend.
Wow.
Nice.
Was it
you know,
GoPro?
No, this was at New York Race Complex, which is Marco Oldhofer's track.
Okay.
And never been there. I haven't driven a comp cart. Haven't driven a Rotax in 10 years. Borrowed a helmet, the whole nine. So
Well, and
Wow.
aside from the 206 stuff, and when you had you been back in well, I guess you were doing shit at GoPro, right? You were doing
I'd
some a little
test.
bit here or there, right?
yeah, I'd
But
test here and
you
there. I
weren't
raced my
racing-
206.
Okay.
But yeah, that was my first. I had the F Series has or they used to have a leopard class.
Okay.
Which at the time, like, this is way after we raced leopards out here.
Right.
You can find leopards I bought my leopard for $240.
Whoa.
Yeah, strapped it on a old go-kart I had laying around, and I went and raced an F-Series race because I could do it for under $1,000 for the weekend,
Yeah.
which was pretty stout. So I did that. I won the race. I'm sorry, I got second because I lost my brakes in the last heat race. But that's to John Bonanno, who then was like, "Dude, you're talented, whatever, let's come race." And so I did that, and that's what started the whole J3 thing.
Okay.
They started, he was like, "Wow, we won that weekend," and he called me back to work with them a little bit and tune for some guys and coach some guys. So I did, and one day we're out at Homestead, and he was complaining about the driver and the shifter, complaining about the chassis, right? It was one of those deals. And I go, why don't you let me rip that thing around? And he's like, "What do you mean? You've never driven a shifter car?" And I go, I have.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Fine, whatever. Next week
Rick
next month."
Races literally got a susuitcase full of Go Racing magazines he brought with him, just
Yeah.
in case.
Yeah, exactly. No, actually, I didn't make many of those. So I'm like, yeah, I know how to rip a shifter around. I think I can handle this. And this is when that 175 just came out.
Right.
And when was the last time you were in a shifter?
My last shifter kart
Competitively,
race, competitive nationally, let's call it nationally,
Yeah, whatever.
was SuperNats 2009. I raced I raced a few streets of Lancasters in shifter, and I raced every year at Willow Springs for Pro Kart Challenge in shifter.
But
That
the
was
last time you were in a gearbox for
Like
a
full
period
time.
of time.
Yeah.
For
had been
full time was 2009.
Wow.
I actually remember talking about this. You said it just kind of fell into your lap in Florida.
It kind of did, yeah. The only question I asked was, can I drive that next month on Friday or Thursday?
Was that like a Florida Winter Tour?
Yeah,
or-
it was the SCUSA
Oh,
Florida
the Winter Series. Got it.
So he's like, yeah, whatever. He's not coming back, so I'll have the kart here anyways. Why don't you come drive it next month on Thursday and go from there?
Put somebody good in after that. And
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
We just want you to shake it down.
Well,
Yeah.
he was just like, if you want to test, it's here. you
Yeah,
know?
whatever.
Right.
Right.
And because my main thing was I was tuning for a couple other guys on comp carts. And I go, listen, dude, I really need to understand like what it feels like. I'd like to know what it feels like so I know what adjustments I would make to it. And he's like, okay, cool.
It's a nice way to sell it. I like that.
It
Yeah.
was great. It was all bullshit, but
I know if I say this.
I know I'll get in the seat.
Yeah.
So we mount my fat ass in the seat, and I got my freaking snorkel helmet on for my NASCAR
Yes, you
stuff
do.
and everything, and and I go out there and I'm like top 4, and on Thursday, and I'm like, I'm tired. I'm very tired, but I was in the top 5. And on time charts, and I'm driving like a hack, I'm out there sliding it around, but we're still quick. And after that, he's like, hey, if you want to race, we can, put the cart together. I'm like, well, that's great. Cool. Free go-kart's one thing, but I got to find somebody to help me out. And that's when I called Baldozer. And, he offered it to me before I left here. I remember a 206 race. He walks up to me and goes, hey, I didn't know you're going out there to drive for Hornaday. If you ever need anything, you call me first. I'm like, sweet. That's pretty cool.
Nice.
So
Frank Baldozer.
Yes, Frank Baldozer.
Who you're still aligned with today.
Yep. So I give him a call, and he's all on board for it. And we got engines from MRC for the year. This is the first year of the 175.
What was the plan? Sorry to cut you off. You do the Winter Series deal.
So I just tested.
You're not,
that was a
yeah,
Thursday.
Exactly.
Okay, you
you're
didn't
not
end up
garbage.
racing.
No, I did not race.
Okay.
No, I was working for somebody else that weekend.
Right.
You're not garbage, but they notice that race ain't garbage.
Right.
So do they go, hey,
Yeah.
you want to do some things?
Yeah, he goes,
and then
what do you want to race? And I'm like, well, I haven't thought about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And
Up until a week ago, I was just a mechanic.
yeah, he goes, well, why don't we do Pro Tour? And I'm like, Pro Tour? Like, dude, I've never raced Pro Tour in my life.
Right.
Now I'm starting to understand how he got that guy, Pete, it wasn't S2, it was Pro 2.
Pro 2.
I'm like, how in the hell is Race Liberante Pro 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering
I'm
that,
like,
too.
you should have been Pro 1.
Well, so
but
I
now
thought
it's starting
the
to make a
same.
little bit more sense because you did kind of jump in again after a while off.
Yeah, it would have been 10 years since my last national level competition
Right.
race.
Wow.
Okay.
In a kart.
I mean, the fact that you're out there killing it right out of the gate doesn't add any credence to the Pro Tool level.
Right.
But out of the gate, it does make a little bit more sense now. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, and honestly,
Because
it
you
wasn't,
were freaking.
it wasn't our decision, really. It wasn't any of our decisions. I wasn't sandbagging because I'm the opposite. If anybody that knows me, I do not
Hold
freaking
back.
sandbag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will take.
Put it right in the fence on a warm up lap.
I'll
before
do
you
whatever I got
sandbag
to do to go QT, right? So, everybody, and a lot of people thought it was the right decision after calling. And I talked to Billy, I talked to Willie, I talked to Frank, I talked to a couple other people that are still active in the sport. Because again,
Right.
I wasn't necessarily out of it, but I wasn't in it either. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't driving; I was driving Briggs. Like, what do you want from me? So
Well, and to your point, you got done with that test going, whoa, I'm tired.
I was dead.
This
I was
is tough.
dead. I did 3 sessions, and the 4th one, I put 2 laps together. I'm like, dude, I'm done.
Yeah.
And so
Which
I was
for those
out
you
of
playing
it.
the at-home game ain't going to cut it at Pro Tour.
No, not at all. And that's the other thing. Like, I have a massive, massive amount of respect for pro shifter drivers. Some other people don't. I do. And because at one point I was that fast. At one point I was racing those guys. I wasn't necessarily winning everything, but I was racing with them. I knew what work it took. So it was 5 days a week in the gym. It was a meal plan. It was all this stuff, working out my hand-eye coordination and whatnot. So like I put a lot of time in 2019 to get myself back up to speed. And I think that's why we had the results we did. But unfortunately, it was only in Pro 2. We had Pro 1 pace every weekend.
Right.
Unfortunately, I was almost discredited with a Pro 2 trophy in my, without being arrogant or anything like that. I felt like, I
You
deserved
could have
to be.
taken it to
Well, I think
the pro guys.
I deserved to be in Pro 1. I
You
knew I
would have
did.
been fighting.
But-
you would have been fighting up there.
Yeah, but when you have the conversation with Tom and Patty about it, when you're getting your license and the whole 9, and they go, listen, dude, it's been 10 years. They're right. It's been 10 years, so I wasn't going to combat them. If that's the structure they want to run, I respect it. So that was the idea. Let's go kick the crap out of them in 2019 in Pro 2. And I ended up winning a lot of open comp races against Billy and Jake French and stuff like that throughout
Rock
the year.
Island Grand Prix for one.
Right.
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, Rock Island was a
And
huge one.
even here at Pro Tour, you were leading overall.
Yeah, well, that was in the rain too, and I was like, I
Yeah.
flat out told the owner of J3, Justin Stefani, I go, listen, dude, I've raced in the rain once.
Wow.
We're screwed.
That
we
is
are
it?
so screwed. Yeah,
Really?
but I race in the dirt now, right? So
Oh,
like,
fair. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, I get out there and I'm like fast, and I'm leading the thing, and
Well,
I win
and
the
the
heat
thing
race.
is, if you add to that, it's cow speed, right? So the
It's a little
surface
different.
sucks, but then you get off surface, it gets better. It's kind of like riding a cushion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I said to him. I came in, I'm like, I can't believe I won the overall in this pre-final. Are you freaking kidding me? I've never done crap in rain,
Bro
you know?
was riding the cushion the whole
And
time.
I was just ripping the lip.
Yeah.
And it worked.
That's the name of the game out here. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah,
That's
and
nuts.
this is like everybody's like, "Do you like that track in the rain?" I go, I freaking love that track in the rain.
Yeah, it's
I go,
garbage.
I'll drive this track in the rain in slicks any
Yeah.
day of the week.
Right.
And they're like, "What the heck is the worst track in the rain?" I go, "You just got to know how to drive it."
Yeah.
Well,
So,
yeah,
that
that's
is it,
definitely-
honestly.
Yeah,
for sure.
but I've never driven here in the rain either because back in the day, we'd pack up and go home. It was just a club race. Why would we stay? Why
Yeah.
would we tear the go-kart up? That was my dad's philosophy. So I had one rain race before that race. And when I won the pre-final, I'm like, oh, now I got cocky, and I started changing the go-kart, and I went backwards. But yeah, I was shocked. We won the overall, and people are then saying, why are you not in Pro 1? I'm
Yeah.
like, I
No,
don't
exactly.
know. I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of
You know?
a stars aligned to go that direction. Again, like I said, the context adds to the story a little bit. It makes a little more sense why you do the Pro 2
Right.
versus the Pro 1.
Yeah, it's just been so long, and again, I have so much respect for AJ and Danny Formal and Andrew and Jake French and all those guys, Billy. that I really didn't deserve to be there. The time and work they put into the program, and I literally, they gave me. It started out, Justin didn't even know my name when I showed up.
Yeah.
I showed up and he was like, "Oh yeah, at the time I still had the kart team, so I was a dealer of Compkarts." So he goes, "Oh, one of our dealers is racing." That was his mentality going in the weekend. Well, we go, P3, P4 in practice, and then we're P1 in the rain. Now he's like, who the hell is this, right? Because I'd been gone for 10 years, and, you guys have been in the sport long enough now. You see people come and go. Every 5 years, I always tell people it's a cycle. Mm-hmm. Every 5 years, there's a cycle. And so people from, again, 10 years since my last race, nobody knows who I am.
Yeah.
Zero, other than the people that have been in the sport for 20, 30 years.
That's so crazy because we were actually pitted right next to each other.
Right.
You were out of it basically was they had their sprinter, and it was just him. Uh-huh. And then we were out of the garage, Jim Barry and I, 'cause it was wet. And so we were running the VLR and trying to get things dialed in there. And I'm like, well, I'm like running senior because there's no masters. And I'm like, I'm fat for senior, but I'm dead nuts for masters. Just making a point that I was at weight for masters there. But point is,
with no lead on the cart.
Yeah. No, hell yeah, I still do that. But in the wet, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's not that big of a deal. So I'm like, we might have a shot because we were only about a half second off on Friday in the dry, and I'm like, well, we might actually build. We were garbage. Kart just didn't work in the wet. But anyway, long story short, I'm looking over, and he's like again pit right next to us. I totally think. At the time, I'm thinking that you're like, you should have been Pro 1 and also the kind of stuff, because I got a chance to race with you 206, and I knew that you'd done some car stuff and whatnot. And for me, car stuff translated into Pro 1.
It should.
It just out of the gate.
And unfortunately, my resume to some didn't seem that way, which I get it, though. Go-karting.
It makes sense with how long of a gap it was, right?
It was 10 years. Yeah. I mean, that's a long time.
Hindsight's 2020. We could all say, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
But regardless.
Granted, I was still racing. It's not like I stopped,
right.
But it wasn't go-karts.
Yeah.
How much weight did you shed?
I shed 38 pounds.
Damn.
Wow. Yeah, before my first Pro Tour race.
Yeah.
So I was already losing weight. When I moved to North Carolina, I immediately started losing weight and working out and taking my body more seriously and stuff like that. Just because I just didn't want to be a fat ass the rest of my life, honestly. And I'm looking at Mike like, screw
you, guy. But I remember I used to fluctuate my weight 20 pounds between an arrive and drive race and the IKF races.
It was when you took your ego out and then put it back in.
Exactly. Yeah. My helmet changed as well.
Nice.
The whole head size.
Size.
Exactly. But in your 20s, you could pull that off.
Absolutely.
You could do that. Oh, I'd love to lose 20. Hell, I could gain 20 really fast.
Yeah, gaining it's easier.
Watch me fluctuate this.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to work on it really bad, and by the summer I got down to 165 as my weight because I was just trying to take it as serious as possible because everybody else is. A lot of people discredit what shifter kart pros really do to stay in shape, and I know everybody's in the gym 4 days a week or working on their hand-eye or whatever because it's that hard. But so I took it very, very seriously, and I think the success we had that year had a lot to do with that. I was on a great program too. There's not many better guys to learn and work with than J3 Competition and the Compkart squad. So I was very, very fortunate for that. Frank Baldozer has become a very good friend and mentor of mine. So he's helped me along the way, and we just had an amazing year together. And
all right, so you have a freaking awesome 2019, right? You end up winning the Pro Tour championship in the Pro 2 class, right? You end up winning Rock Island Grand Prix. Before that, you end up winning Battle of the Brickyard. God, did you win Pro Kart?
No, I did not run any Pro Kart.
Did you do Lancaster?
I did not do
Lancaster. That's right. No, you lamented the fact that you missed that one.
Yep.
I want to say it might have been a conflict. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter. The point is that you had a hell of a year. Oh, and by the way, SuperNats. And had you won SuperNats prior?
No, I had finished second at SuperNats in S5.
Okay. So as a junior shifter driver, you got second.
Yeah.
Had that been... Well, first off, let me back up. The Battle of the Brickyard's a one-off. Mm-hmm. And second time they ran there, the first time they ran it was shifters. I can't remember.
That was the second year of the event.
That would have been like, That's awesome. You had him been stoked.
It was cool.
Rock Island's been on the map for, I think, shifter drivers since the beginning of time with King of the Streets.
Right.
And who was King of the Streets that year?
Which year?
The year we're talking about, 2019.
Me.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I was trying to
I
keep
was
up
say
too
the
for a
first
second.
king of the streets is Joe Janowski.
Oh, really?
Yep.
And then,
Oh, cool.
And Alan Rudolph is synonymous with
Alan Rudolph has the most.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
4,
Not for long.
5.
But yes,
Not for long.
about 4 more years. Yeah, he has 4.
So and again, and that was one of the first times you got a chance to kind of go head to head with some of the best in the business in the Pro 1 level. So to win that, and I know it wasn't like you were on pole and gone, you had to go and earn that thing.
Yeah.
Where I'm going with this entire thing, those 2 one-offs, a one-off deal is pretty cool. In 1 year, you get a couple of marquee events, and you get a national championship. Going into SuperNats, you had to feel like you had a pretty good amount of momentum. Talk about the SuperNats, though, and that Pro Tour and that Pro 2 slot, and the guys you're going against, and it's SuperNats, and you'd like to have that on the old mantle.
Yeah, so at that point, like you just said, we'd won the Pro Tour Championship. We'd won Battle at the Brickyard and Rock Island. So I was pretty confident, right? And I'd raced Andrew and AJ here and there on F-Series race or something like that. So I felt very, very good. All the Pro Tour events we did for the year, we were top 5 overall in pace. So, and that was my goal, really. That was really my goal for the year was, of course I want to win my class, but I want to be faster than everybody. That's my goal. So that way next year I know where I'm at.
Right.
Or if I'm not, where I need to improve and things like that.
And maybe in the back of your head going, maybe I should have been Pro 1. So that kind of lets me know where I am overall.
Right. And luckily for us, like for the most part, we got the race together on the same starting line. So, I got the gauge where I was really at overall and throughout the year. So, like Newcastle, which was the last race of the Pro Tour, I was second fastest overall. It was just Jake French and I. And Jake had 2/10 on Billy, who had 3/10 on the rest of the field.
Wow.
So it was me, Jake, Billy as the fastest, as well as the one race they decided to split us up.
Okay.
So I felt extremely good there. I was looking at the numbers, right, running the data, seeing where I was at, stacked up against everybody, and we were right there.
I mean, the plus side there, right, as a Pro Tour driver, if you can stay with the Pro 1s,
You're there.
Yeah.
you've got such a leg up on the other guys in your class.
Correct.
Right.
And there was, there was a lot of good drivers, like Chente Salas, obviously out here, he kicks butt. He's a super talented young man. Calvin Ming was who I really had to race for the championship. And a couple other really good drivers that were maybe didn't commit to the series, but we had some good competition. But yeah, my goal was to go out there and be the fastest I could be. I wanted to be P1 overall because I wanted that momentum going into 2020.
Right.
And I would have lined up 4th in the main event points wise because we raced the heat races together and then they separated us for the main event at SuperNats. I would have lined up 4th for the main event. So that to me was pretty good. I was pretty happy about that.
You had a shot at a podium.
Yeah.
I think you dodged a bullet though with how that start went.
Man.
Probably better they split you guys up.
Yeah, man.
Exactly.
Man.
So
That was gonna be such a cool race.
Oh, man.
it was
And
gonna be awesome. And it
went to
sucked.
shit. Yeah.
It definitely sucked. But going in that event, I had the momentum, and like you said, like Rock Island to me was my, to this day, probably my biggest achievement in karting, in my opinion, because I had to come from 14th, and I flat out drove around Rory Vanderster, Jake French, and Billy to win it. And granted, it's a street race, so it's kind of not really set up or anything. It's just kind of how big your balls are, and
Right.
I proved that day mine were bigger. And that was it. And I love that. That was like my favorite win of the year because I flat out had to outdrive them to get around them. So that race kind of told me I can do this again, I'm very hard on myself as a driver. I nitpick myself a lot, and that ends up being a negative thing after so long. So to pull myself out of that hole and kind of go, you know what, you do belong here. What are you thinking? That was awesome. So that kind of set the stage for the rest of the year. And I happened to have I broke and separated 2 ribs at that race, chasing Billy down.
Wow.
So
That's right.
yeah,
Now I remember.
yeah,
Now that's why you didn't do Lancaster, because
Right.
I remember seeing you at Lancaster, and you're
Yeah.
like, I got to get healthy for
for Rock the Rio
yeah.
and SuperNats.
and SuperNats.
So so I yeah, I ended up separating 2 ribs, running Billy down. I clipped the barrier 2 or 3 times just over driving, and
Clipping the barrier and still going.
Yeah, yeah, it was like
Yeah.
one of those like back end
Click.
taps, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you have never been to Rock Island, it's gnarly. Like
Yeah.
the track is
it?
gnarly. Yeah. So take Lancaster. It's the same. It's faster for sure, and it's twice as bumpy.
Wow.
So it's rough. So yeah, that kind of set me back a little bit. So I was healing, and my partner now in Race Factory owns a health center, and we did a lot of laser treatments and things like that to help accelerate the healing, and it worked out really well. So I came back, and at the time, Stilo was coming out with the carbon curb rip protector.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah, which is like a godsend. Like it came out at the perfect time. I tested it all weekend, and it really kept me from having to take a trip to the hospital.
I asked Jay, and I'm like, hey, I'd like to try that, grip protector. He's like, I can't get it out of Race's hands.
No.
It's like, I ended up testing it once, but I don't wear a rip protector.
Right. I didn't either before that one.
Yeah, and I didn't. For me, it didn't click because I'm again a little fat, right? So it would actually pinch me. But I'm just used to not wearing one.
Right.
But the overall feel of the actual rib protector itself, had I had more time to like spend some laps on it, I think that'd be the business because it just curves and like it molds.
It molds you.
Yeah,
That's the big
it's
thing.
pretty
Yeah.
bitchin'. So
Yeah.
the fact that you had that, like you said, perfect
That
timing.
changed everything, really.
Did you? And you didn't have that at Rock the Rio.
No, Rock the Rio, I was taping it. So I can't remember what they call it, but it's like fake skin that they sell.
The moleskin.
No, it's like in this, like it's gel, but it's in like a pack. It's for padding. And I bought that. I can't remember what it's called, but I bought a bunch of that, and I cut it all up, and I put it in my seat because that's supposed to really help, and it didn't help, and nothing was helping, and my ribs were in like insane pain, and I literally for the main event had to take it, again, separated ribs very different than a broken rib.
That's what I had back in the day. Yeah.
For a separated rib, I had to actually tape my rib cage together, so I put tape
Oh,
around
God.
my whole rib cage to hold my chest together.
Yeah.
For the main event.
You said you had. You said 2.
Yeah, 2 separated
So
ribs.
when I did it, it was I separated the cartilage. It's separating. It tear the cartilage, right?
Yeah.
Top and bottom of one of ribs on one side, so the rib would just float.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, I separated
So,
the top 2.
top, but on this one and then skip one and then another one.
Yeah.
So you didn't have the float game.
No.
It's bad.
No, not as bad.
It still
it would just
frickin'
separate
hurts,
and
though.
hurt.
Yeah.
So
Life
I,
hurts.
I used to just put Compkart tape around my ribs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I used
It's called branding.
Yeah.
It works
awesome.
good.
Ace bandage,
Brand
all the way around
loyalty.
and-
Yeah.
Man, that's brutal. So that's how you make it through Rock the Rio, and how's that go?
So it wasn't bad. We weren't necessarily the fastest guy. We were a little down on power. Rock gave me an engine because I won a championship, or I'm sorry, I won that through Rock Island. It was a free entry and engine rental for Rock Shifter at Rock the Rio. So they gave me a brand new bone stock engine. Well, let's all face it, it doesn't cut it. So I was actually doing okay. I was top 5 all weekend, top 10 at worst, and ran third most of the main, and then fell back to 4th. So
And also being a street course, if we're honest, there's a little bit of balls involved there, and you
Yeah.
didn't have them with the ribs the way they were.
yeah, no, well, it was just hurt.
Yeah.
It was just in pain. So,
Yeah.
Anybody that's ran to Rock the Rio knows there's 4 first gear corners in a row, and that's hard on the rib cage. So,
Right.
I was struggling, and about 5 laps to go in the main event, I was just about to cry. So I was holding on, and it was a really close battle for third, but I ended up 4th, and got a whopping 2 weeks to recover from.
I'll tell you right now, if SuperNats doesn't go away, it does. You'd be lamenting frickin' Rock the Rio. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you don't win that, you'd be like, stupid Rock the Rio.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
But it does go well.
yeah, it went well. I flew home just to get laser treatments on my ribs to try and accelerate the healing, and came
What a
back.
boon that is, that partnership.
Yeah,
I was about to
it's-
say.
it's actually turned out to be pretty awesome. The
Wow.
way we're working on things for the future is actually awesome. But yeah, I got some treatments done. Came back for SuperNats, and I did a lot of testing out at Willow Springs, which is my home track. And I'm very mental. Like when I'm racing, like I need those days where I just go out and pound laps at my home track and just have a smile on my face and like keep myself in the right mindset. So
So you were going back home to prep. So you must have come back over here for Rock the Rio and stayed in town, I assume. Because you're still living.
I literally left for 3 days just to get laser treatments.
Got it.
To come back and pound my ribs a little bit more the week before SuperNats. So I and I'm big on that. When I come out for a West Coast swing, I always go pound laps at Willow Springs. It's home to me. It's my origin, right? So
Just something to get comfortable with.
it's just a mentality thing. Yeah, like I just love, I get in this weird like mental mood where I'm just having fun driving go-karts again. And that's huge for me, is the fun factor. If I'm not having fun, I don't care to do it. So I always do that every time I come back. And in fact, I'm doing that tomorrow.
Nice.
But so I came back, pounded some laps, figured some stuff out on the setup, because we did struggle a little bit. Again, we want to win every race we enter, so we struggled a bit at Rock the Rio to have that pace, and figured it out at Willow, and then went to SuperNats, and that was a nice rain out the first 2 days, and
Right.
we did okay. We were fast. It just figured it out as the weekend went on, and again we had the pace to run top 5 in pro, and again there's Calvin Ming and Chente Salas and a bunch of other really, really talented drivers in the Pro 2 field, and it was kind of my way of capping off the year, like, yeah, I'm ready for next year.
And then the next year, like,
Sucked.
yeah. So you go from top of the world in 2019. It really, it can't get a hell of a lot better than what you did. You win the national championship, you win SuperNats, blah blah blah, badass. 2020, obviously, we've got the frickin' COVID bullshit that happens.
Right.
How does the year start, and how does it progress for you?
So there's a few things that happened in 2020. The beginning of the year, first things first, the tires changed, right? The new MGs came out. And very, very, very different than the old style MG, which again, I've been racing shifter karts since 2007, 2006 on the same tire. The tire
Right.
hasn't changed in 10 years at this point, right? So I've got plenty of experience. I know how I need to drive them. You can drive the crap out of the kart on them. These new tires are not the same. So now I had to revamp my driving style, right? So I struggled with that a lot. I'll happily admit I was not a very good driver at the beginning.
You're breaking the habit of so many years, though.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, because even if I stepped away for 2 years, guess what? I came back as the same tire.
yeah.
It's okay. So now that the tires changed drastically, I had to readapt our setups, our chassis choices, my driving choices, things like that, and I just didn't find the combination quick enough. Come Pro Tour, which unfortunately we never got to see unfold, so I did the Winter Series, the SCUSA Winter Series, and I got third both races, or every race at that deal in pro, and wasn't very happy with it because the delta gap to Wick and Musgrave was way too much. So we had to go back to the drawing board. Found something for NOLA for Pro Tour. Coming to we're sitting on the grid last session of the day, and that's when COVID started right there.
Right.
So, and none of us thought that, and I remember sitting there going, oh, whatever, they'll reschedule it for next month.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
And 6 months later, we're at Indiana for 2 weeks. Well, within that 6 months, a lot of businesses have changed, right? Karting companies we all had to change kind of what we were doing, whether you were a manufacturer, a team, a dealer, whatever. We all had to somehow stay in business because there was no business to be done. So I started focusing a lot of our time, my personal time with my personal businesses. Again, I'm still driving for Compkart at this point, on coaching kids on sim racing. So
Okay.
I go full time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I go full time sim racing. I mean, I'm competing for some nights on a dirt circle track at Lanier on a late model for $350 to win. That cost me $5 to enter or whatever.
It looks fun as hell too. I still haven't tried the dirt yet.
It's so great.
Is
Oh
the
my
dirt
God,
cool?
how have you not?
Okay.
I
It's
don't
the
have a
best
rig
part
anymore.
of iRacing. It's the best part of iRacing. But yeah,
Came out right after I got out.
I was literally paying my mortgage on iRacing winnings.
Get
Oh,
out,
wow.
man.
No bullshit.
Wow.
We were, I was racing every day. And
300-pound race sitting there in a sim rig, just drive.
I was staying in shape.
Were you
all right?
okay?
I look the same. I gained 5 or 10 pounds, but that's it.
That's what I should do.
That is what you should do. It's great. You don't have to. There's no scales.
Yeah. Nice.
So I was doing that for a while, and then some things were changing with Compkart and their modeling, and kind of where I wanted to go in life. Honestly, COVID was a huge setback for me. I'm like, honestly, like really, we weren't racing. I wasn't working because I also worked at J3 competition. I was building Rotax engines. I did all the Rotax engines for the Nationals when they did the lottery system and stuff.
So sorry, real quick. So when you got the deal with Compkart to go drive with, I mean, when you went and did that, you went from having your own race team,
Right.
to kind of all in on J3.
Sort of. Liberante Race Group, which was my team, became a Compkart dealer. So we were selling Compkarts, supporting Compkarts, and they asked me to come work at the shop. So I, kind of dropped some of that stuff. And still working with drivers. I
still had on. It's like the business ended up being a side deal.
The business became a more club oriented deal.
Okay.
So on the national,
I got
scale,
nothing else going on. I'll go do that.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm driving. I'm working.
So I was working with newer drivers at the club level, and now I was racing on the national level.
Got it.
And it worked out pretty well. But yeah, so when that was all kind of going on, I was also building engines for some people. Again, I've known how to build engines as a young age. Mark Zartarian was a mentor of mine when I drove for him. My father was a mentor of mine. Mike Manning's been a mentor of mine. Darcy DeCoste has been a mentor of mine. So I learned from a lot of these guys how to build engines, and I've kind of entrusted myself to build my own stuff for a long time. So some people asked me to do some stuff, so I was kind of doing that on the side, and kind of made a name for myself on the East Coast with it. And when I started working at J3 as well, I was building go-karts for people, prepping carts, inventories, things like that. They're also the Rotax importer, so I started building the Rotax engines for the national stuff for their national races, which was all lottery engines.
Right. You show up and you basically get out of a hat.
Right. You get an engine, and my job was to make sure they're all the same. So
how many engines are we talking about?
175.
I was gonna say, bro.
Wow.
Yeah, I set the
Luckily, COVID happened, so you got a lot of time.
I set a shit ton of squish.
Why? Wow. Good golly.
But it was all awesome. Those guys are, anybody that would say they're dummies would be a fool in the sport, because they're some of the smartest men in the sport. They've been around for the longest, and I learned a lot from those guys, and I don't think I'd be where I am today without them. So.
So what makes you you end up you have this thing going on here during the downtime, if you will, the shutdown?
Yeah.
You say things start going a bit of a different direction about halfway through the year.
Yeah, so not to discredit anybody, because again, I have massive amounts of respect for everybody in this situation, but I've never been a good employee, and I knew that. I went into that program saying, hey, I'm not an employee here. If you want to, we want to work together and we want to make this better. I'm here for the benefit of everybody that's involved. But I almost feel like I need my voice to be heard, or whatever it may be. I honestly haven't...
Partner, if you will. Or...
Sort of, yeah. But, who's going to give me a partner? Who's going to give a 24-year-old kid a partnership in their company, right?
God, I wouldn't, especially if his name's a Race.
Exactly. So, and that's okay. I respect that decision. But it got to a point where, again, with the COVID thing, it made me reevaluate my life. Really, I've just bought a house. Like I taking payments on this and that. I'm growing up as a human being. I have to do something for my life at this point. I need to make a bigger decision. So as a young age, I've always dreamed about having my own go-kart. I used to draw graphics out and stuff, and it was just kind of always something that one day my whole goal in life, literally my whole goal in life, was to hopefully one day make it as a professional race car driver, become the next whoever, and give back to the karting community and the youth, and hopefully get them, the kids that deserve it, to the top. That was always literally my life goal from a young age. So I always wanted to make sure the best drivers were always at the top, because honestly, they're not. So
you're talking about they don't have the means.
Whether it's NASCAR, Formula One, whatever, money changes everything
exactly.
in today's day and age.
So
in
you're trying to grab the underdog.
Yeah, and I understood this when I was 13, 14 years old. So that's the kind of stuff I dreamed about. I was like, yeah, if I make it, if I'm the one that makes it, and I can give back, that's all I ever want to do. If I can become the best, prove that I was the best, or hopefully prove that I was the best, or be capable of that, retire, and just have a go-kart team and have fun with young kids that deserve it.
Yeah.
That was kind of always my life goal. So part of that was I always wanted my own kart, because like when Fernando Alonso brought his kart out, the FA kart, back in I think it was 2005, 2006, I was like, damn, that is so sick. He was the first one to do it, and it was just so cool. And I'm like, I want that. So it was always in the back of my head. I wanted to do it.
You're like, I'm going to bypass Formula One altogether.
Right, yeah. Screw Formula One.
Yeah.
So it didn't necessarily happen the way I wanted it to. But, it got to a point where I'm making life decisions, and and actually I got a call from a family friend of ours that was, he's a very good friend of my, again, a family friend, long time in Texas, and he called me and asking, hey, I want to make my own karts just for fun. I just want to have fun doing it. I want to make 5 or 6 for me and my friends, and we're going to go road race. We're going to have screw off. But I want them made by somebody, and I want what I want on them. I'm like, okay, well, this is who I'd call. This is what I would do. This is blah, blah, blah. And we had the conversation about it, and he goes, you know a lot about this stuff. If you want to do something, I'll invest in it. And I'm like, cool, man. Appreciate it. I don't think I'm in that position yet. Well, it got to a point where I'm not working.
That planted a seed. That put a little something.
It put a little something in my head for sure. It was a talking point, right? And, I went back to the guys at J3 and said, and I said this from the beginning. To be fair, I said, I'm not an employee. At this point, I already had a business. I'm not a good employee. I'm not here to work for somebody. I will work with you, and I would love to eventually be a partner. And that was ultimately the dream when I was with J3. I wanted to own part of J3. I wanted to own part of Compkart. And, again, everybody has different views on their businesses, and they wanted to keep it to themselves, and respectfully so. But that was kind of my turning point, was like, I have to do something for me. And on top of that, I had a lot of design ideas floating through my head, a lot of things I wanted to try. I have the connections in the industry working with the Madcrock guys to get the job done and get things manufactured. So I already knew people in the industry. So I didn't do much. Honestly, I didn't do any homework. People wonder how hard it is to do for the average guy. It's very hard to do, but I've been in the trenches already with it, and it wasn't hard for me. So it wasn't a massive decision. People think it's this massive undertaking. For most people, it absolutely is. But the fact that I had the relationships established with Europe already, from my days at Madcrock and Croc Promotion and Art Grand Prix and whatnot, worked out in my favor, honestly. So I made the decision to do that, and my now partner, Anthony DeCesaro, was a customer of mine, and he was looking to buy a new go-kart for the next year, and I said, well, hey, if you're going to buy a kart because of me, whatever brand that may be, I wouldn't, because I'm going to do something different. But if you're buying it for the brand, then buy it for the brand. Good, go for you, and I'll help you still, right? And he goes, well, what the hell are you up to? And I'm like, I can't say anything. It's not official yet, this and that. Yeah. And I go, honestly, I don't know how it's going to even work. And it's just an idea right now. And the guy from Texas backed out. And, it's kind of all BS until the check clears.
Right.
That is true.
Right.
So he steps up and goes, hey, I would love to do that with you. His son races as well, so he wanted something for his, the same stories we're talking about and you hear about on your podcast really is like how we all grew up working in this industry and the morals we've learned through the sport and the friendships we've gained. Like, he wants his son to be a part of that, so he wanted to be a part of it too with me. And it's kind of been gelling ever since.
So you basically you're working at J3, mm-hmm. doing the J3 thing, because it turned in from a driver predominantly to being a bigger part of it, and then COVID happens. Now you're even more a part of it.
Well, now I'm actually on the couch when COVID happens.
Okay, so
because nothing's happening.
Okay,
right?
so they're
none
not
of us
building.
are doing shit.
Okay, gotcha. So basically, what happens is you're on the couch, and now you got a lot of free time.
I got a lot of time to think.
And so the conversation with the guy in Texas and things like that, and you're like, nah, I'm not really into it. But then you start thinking about it more and more and more, and then the young race pops up in your head, going, "Hey, man,
yeah, this was
your
where you
own
wanted
kart,
to be."
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about it because you'd known about it since you were a munchkin about financials and things like that. I was like, hey, wait a second, I'm not an employee. This is a way that I could not just be my own boss, but really kind of branch out and maybe spearhead many, many years from now.
Right.
And you have the know-how of the design. You have the connections. So to your point, it's not a big leap to get it done. What makes you actually go, hey, guys, I'm done with this. I'm going to go do this. Like, what pushes you, not over the ledge per se, but what makes you hit the go button?
To be honest, that was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. Because honestly,
it was a good deal at J3.
It was. And
Right.
honestly, those guys, Jim, Justin, and John, are some of my closest friends, and they're some of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. And so it was honestly like heartbreaking for me to have to make that decision to leave that program, because we became family. And John especially became like a father figure to me. so to speak, outside of my own, obviously, now that I'm on the East Coast. So he really took me under his wing, and I learned a lot from them, and I value everything that they've taught me and the knowledge I have now because of them. I have so much respect for them and value to what they brought to the table for me. I only hope I reciprocated the same in the process. But what really made the difference was, I had that year in 2019. It was going great. 2020 kind of started off, honestly, rocky. And it got to a point in my head where I was like, man, dude, I don't know who you think you are, but you're not going anywhere with this. At the end of the day, I'm gonna race go-karts, which is fine. I'm cool with it. I'm having a good time. But am I gonna be making $40 million like Lewis Hamilton is? Absolutely not. So
To be fair, he doesn't race go-karts.
correct.
Yeah.
So
Very good, Mike.
but the amount of time, effort, training, everything I put in for that 2019 to be as successful as it was a lot of time, money, and work. So,
And to be fair, you got accolades,
right.
but you didn't get hand over fist dollars.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Because there is no dollars in it. That's okay.
So basically what you had a situation where you're like, I can figure out ways to go race and whatnot, but how am I going to put food on the table and pay
Right.
the mortgage? And what am I going to do the rest of my life?
Right. And I'm not a small-minded person. Like, I don't want to be a mechanic the rest of my life. I don't see myself doing that. So I wanted to do something. And plus, honestly, I love this sport more than anything. Like, again, I've driven or raced every form of motorsports you can race on four wheels. I've done it all. And I'm fortunate for that. But the one thing that I always come back to is go-kart racing, because it's the purest, most fun form of motorsports there is on the planet, hands down, coming from experience. So it always draws me back every time. I can't leave it in the past. I haven't been able to. And finally I realized, this is kind of where I want to be, and I want to showcase and try and bring the sport to a different level. Because honestly, I may stir the pot a little bit on this statement, but nobody that's older in this industry really has done shit for this sport in the last 10 years. I think I can reinvent the wheel and change it and bring it to a different stage than it's been at. And that's a bold statement, I know, but I think, truthfully, based on what we're doing at Race Factory right now, we can change the market.
And you're going to do that as not just a coach, a team owner or whatnot, but as a manufacturer. And actually, we talked to Billy Musgrave about his deal, and he kind of had the same thought process that as a manufacturer, we can make a big impact. How do you do something like that?
Our biggest thing isn't necessarily the manufacturing of go-kart chassis. It's really not the main focus in our business. Our business is Race Factory, and Race Factory is a lifestyle brand. Race Factory is meant to be broadcasted on all forms of motorsports, but it's to highlight, honestly, like we've talked this last, whatever it's been, 3-4 hours now. I've bled, sweat, cried over this sport, literally all three of those. This is the passion. This is my life. This is everything I've ever wanted. And it's not just me. And I see guys rolling in their pickup trucks, cashing their paycheck the Friday before a race weekend to come race. They don't give a shit about anything else in the world. I'm here to showcase those guys. I'm here to showcase the guys that have the grit, that want to come do this every weekend, that bleed for this sport to keep it alive, or bleed for racing, really, to be involved in it and have a shot at participating on the track. And I think there's no four-wheel motorsports like karting. It's the only thing you can do by yourself, really. It's the only thing you can do out of a pickup truck. There's not much technology invested in it, really, at the end of the day. When you look at the grand scheme of things, it's pure. It's as pure as it gets. And my job in all of this is to showcase that. Think about Hoonigan for the drift world. Drifting was nothing before Hoonigan came along.
They got a brand on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what Race Factory is meant to be for the karting world. Now, granted, we broadcast all forms of motorsports, and we're invested in many forms of motorsports, but the chassis side of it is more or less my passion side of it. It's my shot to prove that I may know how to do something better than somebody else and make a fast go-kart, and that's what my passion is in it, is the back end of it. But Race Factory as a brand is not meant to be just a go-kart brand. It's meant to be a lifestyle brand built around karting.
So now that you've got this brand that's around you, and it's got your name in it, and it's what you do, you race. As you move forward here, I mean, you're not an old guy. You got a lot of years in front of you. What do you do if you've got this new business here out of a tumultuous 2020? into a 2021 where everybody's thinking, it's the reset button. We're gonna get things rolling, things are gonna get better, and it only has silver linings around everything going forward. To your point, it's not just a chassis brand; it's about a lifestyle or a way of thinking moving forward. Putting a point maybe on you as a driver. I know that at the Phoenix Challenge race, you were in the 100cc. This weekend, you're talking about being in the shifter. Are we seeing maybe a race have a bit of a backseat in the driving aspect and put a little bit more focus on the
business side of it?
Yeah, and the way of life moving forward for you.
Yeah, I definitely am not in quite the position to do as much racing as I did in the past. I'm investing, a lot of my time and effort and money and whatnot into the Race Factory brand. And honestly, I've had an amazing time investing in young drivers, talented young drivers. So it's become like a different side of the sport that I've never seen before. The passion side of it is still, I can live that kind of through a 10-year-old, you know what I mean? But of course, I still love racing. I'm still going to race. My schedule may be a little bit more limited. I'm not necessarily going for that Pro Tour #1 plate, but you'll definitely see me at all the races I want to be at. You'll definitely see me at the Rock Islands and the Quincy's and, Brickyard and SuperNats and
the big
whatnot.
events.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do my best to train for that stuff during the week. But my focus now moving forward is a little bit more of the development of the materials and design and whatnot, and more or less testing a lot this year. The money's not necessarily going back into my pockets, going right into testing. So as much as, you may only see me in 10 races this year, I'm going to be at the track every day of the week, testing new product, testing prototypes, whatever it may be, to better our racing division of the company and move forward.
Well, I got to tell you, as you say, it's been a bit of a conversation here, a long one, which is what makes it so much damn fun, because we get a chance to find out about who the guest is, in this case, Race Liberante, which I knew crap about, to be honest.
We knew you raced cars and weren't bad in a 206.
Yeah, I mean, we got a chance to go wheel to wheel with you. I've known you've been a bit of a wheel man for a few years now, just from the 206 days and then watching and stuff like that. You're obviously a smart cookie with all the different things that you've gotten a chance to do over the years. It makes a hell of a lot more sense now. And man, I got to tell you, this is a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you taking the time to carve out a little bit of time. As you say, you're going to go to Willow tomorrow and burn some laps down before coming down here to challenge again. And we appreciate you coming out, bud.
Yeah, I appreciate the chance. It's not necessarily, I've never been the open, over talking about myself kind of person. So my origin story and my experiences, some people may still look at Race Factory and go, why is that guy doing that? And they don't know the difference. So I'm super stoked that I got to come on here and kind of just honestly, for the first time in my life, talk about myself a little bit and where I came from and some of the things that kind of led to where we're going with my life and see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been a good time over these couple of hours, and looking forward to see what we do this weekend and moving forward, bud.
Yeah, man. Best of luck this weekend.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again, buddy.